today, and you are listening to Nerds Without Pants.
This week on NWP, what was I saying again?
Girl, nice to meet you. Would you like to let me teach you all the ways I'd like to reach you from the back of the class? You keep me guessing, man, you're messing with my lesson plan. Your body's window dressing and my heart's made of glass. Sexual tension was what I would like to mention. This is like a new dimension and I want it to last. It felt like destiny when you began undressing me. If this is just like testing me, it looks like a pass. Girl, I like the way that you dance when you dance. Like the way that you dance when you dance with your pants off. I like the way that you dance when you dance. Like the way that you dance when you dance with your pants off. I like the way that you dance when you dance. Like the way.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Nerds Without Pants, episode 120. We cover everything while bearing it all. Kept you waiting, didn't we? I am Julian, and I'm joined as always by Patrick.
Dude, I forgot.
I'm not surprised. And Angelo.
I did not forget. Haha.
No, but I did. We've been gone for almost a month now, and that's entirely my fault. We were supposed to record, and I was sick. And then I had something planned the following week, so we couldn't do the follow-up recording. And then I forgot that I was going to be out of town the week after that. So that ended up throwing everything off, and I feel really bad. But we haven't missed an episode in over 2 years. So, every podcast, will end up, skipping or something unless you're the Giant Bombcast and just come out every week like clockwork, even when your host dies. So, unfortunately, we don't have that level of commitment, but we're pretty darn committed. I've got the straitjacket to prove it. So, we should be. What's that, Patrick?
I feel like we're many episodes ahead, actually, though, because we've done a lot of specials and we've taken when we should have had a week off. We've gone on, and that might happen again soon.
Yeah, so we try to even out the debt when stuff like this happens. So apologies, we do try to keep it consistent. I mean, that's kind of how these podcasts live or die based on how frequently they update and stuff like that. So we appreciate you sticking around and continuing to subscribe and everything like that. Didn't see any new reviews, so if y'all can get on that, that'd be great. Go to iTunes and review us if you can, because we could use them. But that's enough for that. This is going to be a regular format, like always, and we're finally going to get to this stage select. So let's just go ahead and hit the stage select. Patrick, this is your stage select, which is why it's so unique and interesting. I'll let you take it over, but I was wondering, do you want to do this like we just each do our whole thing instead of going around the room? Because I think that would fit a little bit better. Yeah,
it's going to be hard to tell like whose Mount Game More is theirs if we just do one at a time. And I don't know if yours is like me, but when I was like watching TV and all of a sudden it just hit me, all four of them, and I was like, oh man, there's no Microsoft. But I think everybody knew there wouldn't be.
Right. Well, and so go ahead and remind everybody, because we've been gone for a little bit, like exactly what you wanted from the listeners. And I will say, we got a metric ton of entries for this stage. So
that's good, because I think it's going to go a little bit faster because it's kind of just like a slideshow of faces, but it should be the four people or characters. It could be either one you think are more important, whatever you would put on your four faces of video games. And I called it Mount Game More, but I'm thinking Mount Gamer More. I don't know. I'm not sure what's the name here, because it's Rushmore, I think Game More, and everybody should probably game more. So let's go with it.
Yeah, I think that sounds better.
Yeah. So yeah, I also like just like Trump wanted to carve a fifth name in, or a fifth head in.
No, Patrick. See, that's your problem with all these. Is like every time there's like a set number of things, you're like, but I also have like 18 runners up, so I'm just going to list those off real quick.
Well, yeah, it was just hard for me because I did want to show the Master Chief love, but I just couldn't get him in there with 4. 5 could have done.
Right. Well, how do you want to do this? Where do you want to start?
I'm really curious as to what Julian says in rebuttal, because you're the biggest Microsoft guy out of all of us, and I was just wondering if anything made it on there.
I don't think that's true. I would say Angelo might be the bigger Microsoft guy, because he got the Xbox, the original Xbox and the 360. I only had the 360. Okay. Well, and the One. So I guess he and I cross, we come at it from different generational angles.
And you're thinking about the X, right? The One S.
I got it pre-ordered, buddy.
Right.
Oh, do you?
So
yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit in Consumption Junction, because I have a problem. But okay, so Mount Game More. You can come at this a lot of different ways, and you'll see in the listener input that there's a lot of different ways to look at this. I kind of picked and chose in different styles. Basically, each of my selections has a personal thing for me, but then also a universal thing. Because I think that if you're doing a monument like this, there should be some semblance of universality to it, because arguably people are going to see this for generations to come, right? So it should be something that stands the test of time. So my first statue, or my first face, is Pac-Man. I'm not a huge Pac-Man fan, as far as old school Pac-Man. I love Championship Edition DX, that's my jam. But I'm a dyed-in-the-wool arcade rat, and I think Pac-Man is the perfect encapsulation of the arcade scene, right? Because it was the beginning of the arcade boom. Well, not the beginning, but Pac-Man fever was a thing for a reason, right? But then it also, I think, kind of blankets into all of the 80s, Double Dragon, Galaga, all that good stuff, but even covers into the 90s with Street Fighter. Because I almost thought about putting Ryu from Street Fighter, but I feel that Pac-Man represents arcades as a whole better than Street Fighter does, because Street Fighter is a much more specialized thing. So I've got Pac-Man on there first off.
I don't know why that didn't even come to me, even though I still played Pac-Man Championship Edition. And that's when my parents were on the ski trip, if you remember from way back, maybe even Pixel Talk, they met and they played their first game together, in the arcade. They played Miss Pac-Man.
Aw.
Yeah. So
I like that story.
Yeah, it's a personal story, and I probably never would have existed without it.
They were actually banging on top of the Ms. Pac-Man cabinet when Patrick was conceived. She's like, is that a joystick, or are you happy to see me?
Oh.
It's both. Sorry.
Power pellet.
Sorry.
It took 5 years to get to that point.
My second statue or my second carving, whatever you want to call it, is Shigeru Miyamoto. For so many reasons, right? He's the creator of Zelda, Mario, Star Fox. Beyond that, he's kind of for me personally, it's Mario, right? That is the thing for Miyamoto that means the most to me. I arguably would not be playing video games if it wasn't for Mario. There might have been something that came out later on, but Super Mario Brothers was the thing for me. But also, his influence on the industry, he's directly responsible for, the design of the Nintendo 64 controller, the GameCube controller, the GameCube system, the Wii. All of that stuff is directly from input of him. And so I think that he's Nintendo, right? More so than any of the presidents or anybody else on the staff. Miyamoto is Nintendo. And you can't have a monument to video games without Nintendo being represented. So I kind of used him as the catch-all for the entire company.
That's a good way to put them all into one face, because you could arguably put all 4 Nintendo characters on there.
Oh, easily, and still have room, or still wish that you could put 10 more people on there because of so many memorable characters. What you got anything to say, Angelo, about that? Or
No. I think this is funny how this is going.
I think it's really interesting that you already mixed developer with character in just 2. So
Yeah, I mean, some listeners definitely went all developer, and I initially was going to do all character, but then like you had said something at the very end of the last episode, and it's like, oh yeah, I guess you could do developer. So yeah, and I definitely wanted to represent somebody who had made video games on there, because the rest are more esoteric. My third one is a Moogle from the Final Fantasy series. So personally to me, like Final Fantasy is like probably my favorite video game franchise. I mean, I collect all of the mainline Final Fantasies in all of their iterations. I'm not missing very many, guys. Like I'm missing like Final Fantasy 1 and 2 on PSP. I'm missing the Wonder Swan games, and I'm starting to branch into the Japanese versions of everything. So it's a very big deal for me. But as a more universal thing, I'm using the Moogle as a representation of role-playing games, but specifically Japanese role-playing games. Because again, that's like, Japanese role-playing games are what solidified me as being a gamer. Like, it was Final Fantasy IV on the Super Nintendo that I played that, and I was like, there's something here that is going to be with me for the rest of my life, and this isn't going away. This is no longer a toy for me. This is something special. So that's what it represents for me, but I'm using the Moogle, again, to represent that genre. And, you know, because I've played more RPGs than any other genre. And I was actually complaining about this today because, like, there's so many freaking RPGs coming out right now, guys. It's insane. And I want them all, but they're all like 80-hour experiences, and nobody's got that time. So it's a bummer. I'm just kind of scrolling them away for later, like when I retire or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
Lastly, but not least, kind of comes at it from a different angle. But I have Commander Shepard wearing the N7 helmet in order to keep Commander Shepard's anonymity, because Commander Shepard is whoever you want him or her to be. And that was such a powerful thing for me personally. So, you know, as I've said many times, like Mass Effect was like a sea change for me personally, where I shifted my type of role-playing love for a while to this Western style, but also that personal investment in that character over those 3 games was such a powerful thing for me. So it's a very personal thing for me, but then again, universally, I have Commander Shepard on here to represent the, like, modern games, and when I say modern games, I mean from, like, the 2000s on, where people were able to tell deeper stories, but also how important player choice became in the equation. Because up until that point, I had played nothing but very linear, point-by-point storylines in video games, where you were going to experience the story, you know, the way that they want you to experience. Where Mass Effect was, you're going to experience the story the way we want you to experience it, but there are all of these different pathways for you to get there. And they're going to branch out and come back together, but every time they branch out, it adds a little bit more of a personal touch to your version of this story. And that was just such a big deal for me. Like, even if the ending of Mass Effect 3 was a little bit of a letdown, the journey of Mass Effect 3 was still like, holy crap, I can't believe like they remembered this thing that I did 2 games ago. Like, this is amazing. Like, all these little personal touches, it's because it's my story. And, you know, like, that's amazing. And there'll probably never be anything to that level again, because it's such a difficult thing to plan for that across 3 games. And it's a, like, I don't envy anybody trying to plot that stuff out. So that is my Mount Game More. Drop the mic.
There
Boom.
you go.
Every time I finish saying something on Nerds Without Pants, Patrick and Angela just like sit there like,
It was good. It was good.
I'm sitting here thinking, I'm glad we're not on radio, so we can cut this out. No, but you got to think about it a little bit, and I think it's interesting that you put a character who's like Master Chief, but not Master Chief because he's personal to everybody. But as far as his aesthetic,
I can see Master Chief getting on people's lists, but I find Master Chief to be really boring. Like, not just in design, but personality. And I don't quite get the attachment that people have to him. I get the attachment to the series, but I don't really get the attachment to Master Chief himself.
Is that why, like, Link didn't make it, or Mario even didn't make it specifically? You put them through Miyamoto?
Yeah, and I think, like, if you're going to twist my arm, I would put Mario on there. because he means a lot more to me than Link does. And even more than Samus does, even though Super Metroid is my all-time favorite video game. I think that I've probably spent more hours in the Mushroom Kingdom than I have in Zeb's. Even though I've played Super Metroid more times than I can count. Plus, it's like he's like the Mickey Mouse of video games, right? Like,
yeah.
Like if you were going to do this for like animation, there's no way you could not put Mickey Mouse on that structure, right? Like you just can't do that.
Oh, we'll get there when this changes to be just about movies. But no, that was a good 4. I wouldn't have guessed some of those ever, but they work. And
thank you.
Yeah, I like that it came out in your personality, what you would put there, and it's something that I could see you wanting, like, to be able to see on your back porch in Colorado or something.
Right. That's the dream.
That's
just carve it into the Garden of the Gods.
It's funny. There's like overlap already. Like half your list sort of overlaps with mine in a different way, though.
I thought there would be some overlap between the three of us. So yeah, I'm curious if we want to move on to Angelo.
Oh yeah, go for it.
I took this very literally in a way.
Like you do.
Yeah. Well, what I did is I looked at the 4 people that were on Mount Rushmore and thought, like, who are the game or parallels? I didn't even go with, like, mascots or characters. I went with, like, just pure. Wow. These are the individuals who did this for video games. Now, obviously, when it comes to people like Lincoln, there was no freeing the slaves in video games, okay?
Yeah, I was going to say, who's on Mount Rushmore?
Oh, wait. But didn't Sonic free all of the furry critters from Robotnik?
Hell yeah.
Not exactly the same. But so here's
I can't say that with a straight face.
You know, the first face is Washington, father of the country, the guy who literally, like, fought and kind of forged it out of something. And I think, and this might be controversial because there's a lot of figures that could go in here, but I mean, you know, like democracies, republics, those things existed before Washington, you know, helped forge the United States. Just like video games sort of existed before they really became a thing. But somebody really made it become this thing. And actually, I think it was Nolan Bushnell.
I thought you were going to say the Pong ball.
Once again, Ralph Baer gets the shaft. No, but honestly, you were right. Like I agree with you.
Yeah. I think like
Nolan Bushnell made it a business. He made it an entertainment thing.
Well, I mean, I could have, like I said, like Bayer did all sorts of stuff, but Nolan Bushnell was Atari. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nolan Bushnell was the entire coin-op industry. Like that was his whole, he got the ball rolling. A lot of other people helped put stuff into the ball, but he was the one who made it actually a machine that moved. You could go on about this for a long time, but I think I just summed it up already. Like, we would not have had the arcade scene if it wasn't for Nolan Bushnell saying, hey, here's how we can actually make a profit on this, because, you know, this whole space war thing doesn't really work. But, hey, let's make it simpler. Let's make it something that you can, you know, put in a bar and people will slam quarters into it and play it, and they'll immediately know how to do it. And then you have a successful industry.
There's actually a few good video game documentaries that are escaping my mind right now, but you could see on Netflix, for instance.
Yeah. And I would say that, like, I would want to see the movie about Nolan Bushnell. I have no real interest in seeing the movie about Ralph Baer, because, like, Nolan Bushnell was, like, a character, and he had those crazy hot tub, like, party/meetings. Everybody was high.
Yep.
You had people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs working at Atari. So just think about, like, the types of brains that were working at that company that spun out and just changed the world after that. So that's the story I want to hear.
I considered putting Steve Jobs on here, but he's not really a video game.
He hated video games.
He did. I mean, despite the fact that he worked on a few and developed platforms accidentally that became, like, dude, how many of us played on an Apple IIe because every single school in the world had them? You know, how many people play games on their iPhones? How many people play Breakout clones, since he helped develop Breakout? But at the same time, he never wanted to be a game developer. That's just how he got started. He wanted to be an engineer. He wanted to be a programmer. Whatever.
I would, if you had put Steve Jobs on there, I would have taken serious exception to your.
I actually typed it out and looked at the list and said, "There's just no way he fits on here." So
because who else is on there?
Well, so Jefferson, this is an interesting thing, too, because I wanted to look for somebody who had seen the way things were going and just said, nah, that's not really... Because he's also kind of a founding father figure, right? But it was George Washington, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson. John Adams did a lot of things that people didn't like. He was far from our worst president, but he was not a lot of his decisions were not very popular. And Jefferson was the guy who went in and said, nope, let's undo all this and go in a different direction. And I'm not trying to say that necessarily that video games are going in a bad direction, but I think like Toru Iwatani, and I'm probably butchering his name, the developer of Pac-Man, was the one who said, okay, this is good, we have a thing going here, but we need to innovate this. And he was the first person to really do that. Like, he was the first person to really say, let's change the direction of the ship a little bit. And Pac-Man is exactly that. Pac-Man is a game that is, he started sort of a subgenre in a way of these like maze chase games, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that was a big genre in arcades for a while. It's a great single screen arcade game type of thing. We didn't have scrolling. We didn't have all the fancy tricks. We didn't have anything crazy. With the very simple tools we had that were just making basically space shooters and like sort of simple things, he went and said, well, let's do this instead.
And he like maybe inadvertently or by on purpose made a simple but very charming character that has maintained, ever since. Like, everybody knows Pac-Man.
Right.
And even if you've never seen like the cartoony version of Pac-Man, like, you see that, you know exactly who it's supposed to be.
And I think it did more for the changing things than Space Invaders did, even though in other places, I think Pac-Man was more popular here than Space Invaders was as far as like generating a craze. Space Invaders maybe in Japan, but
Space Invaders in Japan, they were actually running out of the yen coins that you used for the arcades at the time. Wow. They were all in Space Invaders machines.
Yep. Which is wild. But,
that's probably the one I played the most on Game Boy, too, later on. But for me, it was first.
It's a good one, yeah.
Yeah. So let's move on to Lincoln. Here's the thing. Everybody loves Lincoln, right? If anybody doesn't look at the list, if Lincoln isn't on your list of top 5 presidents, you're doing it wrong.
He was so good he accidentally made slavery not okay.
I wouldn't say he did that accidentally, but this isn't really a podcast for this. But he was a revolutionary too. Absolutely, and he did. He took a very bad situation and did make it into something good, right? Miyamoto is your man as far as this goes, and I think that because first of all, he made his name by turning a disaster into something incredible. He is the guy who turned a failing Space Invaders clone into Donkey Kong, which was another huge arcade hit. Also, a lot of big innovations in video games came as a result of him. We have a lot owe him a lot in developing what we consider a console game today. The entire concept of this is not an arcade port. This is not just a version of a game that you play at home, which was what the Atari 2600 was essentially full of, and all the other platforms were more or less doing at the time. He gave you a game where score really didn't matter. People didn't play Super Mario Brothers to score chase. They played it to explore the Mushroom Kingdom and complete certain things. And then even more so with Zelda. Zelda has no arcade trappings whatsoever. None. So that's where you really start to see that shift.
Yeah.
And also, Nintendo, thanks to Miyamoto's creations, got the video game industry out of the crash of '83. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's that aspect of it too.
He turned a small arcade company, not single-handedly, mind you, but which of these people did anything single-handedly? Right. But he turned it into a juggernaut. Nintendo would not be Nintendo without Miyamoto. No question about that whatsoever.
He took an industry that was mostly competitive, honestly, because of the high scores being the general purpose you were playing a game, to something more recreational or fun. And I think...
And cooperative in a way, because you didn't discover warp zones, and then I discovered warp zones, and then Julian discovered warp zones all on our own. Like, somebody heard from somebody and then told somebody else, and maybe somebody discovered one of these things, but it was like, for every one person that discovered something, that spread, right?
Yeah.
So it is a weird sort of meta co-op that he inadvertently started in a way, too, and there were no co-op arcade games, as far as I know. There were games with co-op elements, like you could play... No, Joust was... But I don't know what Joust was.
I mean, by the time I was growing up in the early 90s, like, we didn't even care about high scores anywhere. I mean, we would go to, like, Aladdin's Arcade was what was called in the mall, but we wouldn't even really play the high score stuff. We would play more fighting games like Marvel vs. Capcom or Street Fighter because, like, we didn't have, like, all the quarters we needed to do those things. It was more fun to just play with each other like we were used to when we were at home, when we were talking about all the secrets we knew about. And, like, just knowing those little things that people wouldn't see at first glance in levels like that were sort of rites of passage.
Yeah, definitely.
So the last one, Teddy Roosevelt. There are a bunch of tough men carved in this rock, and this is the bad boy of them, right? Like, this is the guy who as a young man was in the Rough Riders. This is a dude who took a bullet in the middle of a speech that buried into his chest muscle, finished the speech, and then went and got medical treatment. Okay? I mean, there's all sorts of stories about Teddy Roosevelt. Like, he got bored with politics and decided to go start a ranch and live out in the middle of nowhere for a while, and then chase down cattle thieves on his own when they stole his boat. He made his own boat and then chased them. Like, okay, this is... So who's the bad boy of video game development? Keeping in mind that it's also revolutionary, right?
Oh, God, Cliff Bleszinski.
Cliff Bleszinski.
Oh, no!
There was one before Cliff Bleszinski who was definitely the bad boy. When everything else was kind of cheery and maybe you shoot spaceships and things, like somebody said, hey, let's put demons and blood in here and it'll be awesome. How about some John Carmack, ladies and gentlemen?
Okay.
Oh, Carmack. I thought you were going to say Romero.
Romero was more of a creative. John Carmack was more of the engineer. And Romero has a legacy, but I think Carmack's is bigger when you consider that half the net code on planet Earth right now still pulls from Doom. Like, there's still lines of code, because he released the source code from Doom, right? And I guarantee you right now, there's a very good chance that if you're playing a game online right now, some of that net code came from Doom. There's a very good chance of that.
Doom might even be hidden deeper in the game itself.
Where was I hearing? Was it on... there was a podcast I was listening to where there was a game that they built in Unreal where you could walk up to a phone in the game, pick up the phone, and then play Doom on the phone. Like, all of Doom was on the phone in the Unreal Engine game.
Oh, my God.
I think I did... Wait, isn't... No, yeah, I did hear that, but I forget. Maybe it's the new Wolfenstein game.
Maybe.
Because it would have to be something that's...
id.
You know, you can't do that
right.
Just willy-nilly.
It's just amazing, though. Like, they've got Doom running on, like, printer LCD screens because this dude got it down so small that it fit on, like, a couple of floppy disks. Right? So, yeah. I mean, I think that's... And then he was just like, oh, hey, whole first chapter's free, guys. Call us if you want more. Here's the game. Like, that's... The original gaming bad boy was him. I think Cliff Bleszinski owes a lot to old school id for sort of the persona he kind of rolls around with now. Like, a lot, I'm not saying that's not a genuine thing from him, but it's kind of been done before.
Mm-hmm. I would just say that if you're saying, like, bad boy persona, like, I think Romero, because, like, Carmack is like the super nerd that, like, you can't even talk to because he's so out there. And it's like, Romero is the guy with, like, the luxurious hair down to his butt and the leather jacket. And, like, you know, he's gonna make you his bitch with Daikatana.
As far as that goes, yeah, I guess, but Carmack is sort of my representation of id as a whole.
What if we just put them both together and call him John Camaro?
Dude, that's amazing. You can't have been the first person to make that joke, but...
It's first I've heard of it.
No good. First I heard it.
First I've heard it.
Nerds Without Pants exclusive.
We got jokes.
John Camaro.
Or just one joke every 5 years.
Okay, that's good. John Camaro's going on my wall. That's great. Oh my word, dude. Okay, so there's mine. I can't top that one, Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, that was very well thought out, and I think if we're going to make an actual Mount Gamemore, that should probably replace our presidents. That would probably be closer to what we should put up there. Now, mine is the exact opposite of the spectrum, of course. It's just extremely abstract. And
I would expect nothing less.
But
the second one is a cube.
Yeah.
The Tetris block.
Yeah.
It's a polygon.
It's it's Portal. Just the portal itself.
Just the hole.
All 4 of them. I just enter and exit.
Holes in a mountain.
No. Mine was my gut, and I didn't change it from the first second that I thought of it. I just was watching some TV. It wasn't even anime, but I closed my eyes, and it came to me like this. It was Mario, Link, Sonic, and Ratchet.
Damn.
Okay. Mario, Link. Yeah, go on. I want to hear it. I think Doom Guy should be in there somewhere, but go on.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are the 4 in the 90s/2000s biggest characters and almost caricatures of those 2-ish, 3-ish genres. I don't have everything represented there, so it's a little bit weighted in the third person, platforming. But that's that's where all of video games kind of blossom. And
true,
I think it's your personal mountain, though. You know what I mean? When I built one, this is why we totally different approaches. When I built mine, I was if I was making something to represent video games to the world, this is what I would do. And you're like, dude, this is what's etched in my own. If this mountain was inside me, this is what it would be.
Right. And I kind of split the difference.
Yeah. See, I was if I go out back, I want to be in a cartoon already. And what are the 4 characters that I want to be in my cartoon? It's them. So, I don't have specific reasons, but I feel like they all mesh together and they're all so fun that you can't really take one of them out. And, I mean...
You could probably take Sonic out.
Yeah, but without Sonic, without Sonic, you wouldn't have Knuckles to carve them out.
No, but in all seriousness, especially that collection of characters, you can't have that collection of characters and not have Sonic there, right? You have Ratchet there, you can't omit Sonic because I feel if anything, Sonic is a more important character than Ratchet is.
Well, I think the we'll call it the sass of Sonic kind of directly led to that spirit of platforming, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I would put Mario and Sonic in the middle, next to each other, and then Link on the left, and Ratchet next to Sonic probably on the right. Maybe even have his own Rhino gun or something coming out of the side, because that's what Ratchet really represents for me, the customizable options and just the BFGs out of nowhere that you would find and have to find parts to even and stuff like that would take platforming to new lengths, new extremes.
Yeah. And you actually have a lot more genres represented there than you think, because I mean, with Ratchet, you've kind of got platformers and shooters in there, also multiplayer shooters. You've got Mario's done just about everything at this point, and then Link represents the adventure / role playing. And then Sonic is you can make a case that Sonic doesn't just represent platforming, but also represents Twitch gameplay.
Well, I would say Sonic represents a lot of the arcade spirit of video gaming, more so than anything else on that mountain, right?
Speed running and things like that,
right? Speed running, not necessarily score chasing, but just ability, right? Mario is more about, here is a puzzle platforming sort of thing in front of you, figure out how to do it. But you take your time. You don't move fast. It's very deliberate. Whereas Sonic is once I know this level, I'm going to shred it.
And he is the emancipator, like you said. If Eggman represents the South and slavery, the bunnies are.
Well, he would take, if he was third, he would take Lincoln's spot.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know.
Someone's going to get offended.
Yeah, even Mario today, I've played the new Mario Cross Rapids. That's essentially XCOM Mario style. So
I want to play that because it sounds so ridiculous.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, and it runs better than XCOM does on worse hardware. So that's great. But Nintendo is just amazing at everything. And yeah, Mario is everywhere. He's in all sports. I mean, they may not be good sports games in some cases, the soccer one is way too easy, but they do have some fun power-ups that Megaman wasn't able to parlay when he tried to be in the soccer world, which is why he didn't make it.
Yeah.
Poor Megaman.
Yeah.
I actually feel bad about we're not too freaking thing, but last week when I picked Mega Man 3, I was like, why didn't I pick Mario 3? I don't know why I did that, but let's keep going. I had such regret after I thought about that.
Well, we will keep going, and we'll actually head over to pixelbit.com, where we got possibly the most number of entries for a stage select pick ever. So we'll try to go through these. It's actually on par to be a shorter segment, and so now I just jinxed it. Xrian has he wasn't the first person to comment, but he was the first person to submit a stage select pick. And also, again, really appreciate all the comments we've been getting lately. I've been trying to get into the thread and comment as quickly as I can. Sometimes I'll let it sit a little bit, and I'm trying not to do that because people have been very vocal about the show lately, so I appreciate that. Keep it coming.
Also, thank you for people who are sending me messages on Twitter or Instagram or wherever you see me, or Facebook, because it's nice to hear when there's a good deal on certain games, because y'all know how cheap I am.
Xrian's number 1 is Samus from Super Metroid. He simply says, gaming's greatest girl, and it's a spot on here. I would agree.
Mm-hmm. Although greatest girl, wait, can we debate greatest girl is Samus?
No.
Okay.
Who's the greatest girl?
Ooh,
me?
Chun-Li?
Yeah, Chun-Li might be. But I don't know. She doesn't have a gun mounted to her arm, though.
Miss Pac-Man?
No.
Although I would argue that both Samus and Chun-Li don't have much in the way of established personality.
Right.
So I might put Lara Croft. Especially modern Lara Croft, because she's a lot more of a fleshed out character. Also, by the way, the trailer for the new movie looks freaking fantastic. It's almost a shot for shot recreation of the 2013 Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
I know this series wasn't very popular, but I think the main character was kind of badass and doesn't get a whole lot of love. But Valis, like the girl in that.
Oh, okay, but nobody remembers Valis.
I don't think, yeah. But she's freaking awesome.
In 30 years.
Yeah, those games were cool.
In 30 years, it could be Horizon or Aloy. Or Aloy.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Right now, I would agree with Samus.
Okay. I'll agree.
Even though, like I said, her personality isn't kind of fleshed out, she's kind of like Link in the sense that she's like a blank slate, and a lot of people impose this veneer of badassness to her that may or may not be actually in the character.
Because it was fleshed out once, and that was not good.
That's not a real game.
Right, it doesn't exist. The game that shall not be named.
Xrian's number 2 is kind of a head scratcher. It's Pyramid Head from Silent Hill 2. He says, one of the icons of horror games would be awesome. It's practically finished if we can just import it from Egypt. I see what you did there. Just graft a pyramid onto the mountain.
I have a friend of mine who cosplays, and when I was Link, one day went as Lady Pyramid Head, which was the craziest cosplay costume I probably have ever seen, because, yeah, I mean, the blood that she put on her, it was like a dress that was made to be like at a wedding with a pyramid on its head, and basically it was all like bloodied and dirtied and stuff like that. It was terrifying.
Am I supposed to be turned on right now? I don't know.
I mean, don't
she was
know how I feel about that.
She was curvaceous.
Xrian's number 3. This seems like a Patrick list. His number 3 is a Tetramino from Tetris. He says, any shape except the square. Damn you and your brethren, square.
I like it, though. I do like it. Tetris is a big deal.
Yeah. Tetris is a big deal. We'll probably be talking about it a lot later on tonight. And his number 4, wrapping it up, is Amaterasu from Okami. He says, the sun goddess deserves a spot and everybody loves dogs, right? Yeah. I don't feel like that character is quite iconic enough for this type of monument, but I know the love that people have for that character, so I'm not going to knock it by any means.
I'm glad he brought up gods, though, because I was thinking about putting Kratos on there, even though I've got a love-hate relationship with that series. I just feel like he looks like he should be made of stone.
Right. My thing is with Kratos has always been like he's just kind of a dude, like a bald dude.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I wish that he had a little bit more dynamism to his design. I don't know. That might be just me though. Like he grew on me over time, and then after God of War 3, I was like, I want nothing more to do with you.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't help that there were so many bald dudes that were like leads in that generation too.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. Tyrone Swift kind of echoes you, Angelo, as far as going all straight up developers.
I like it.
His number 4 is John Carmack. He says, I'm admittedly not the biggest Doom guy because I didn't have a PC in the days when it was huge, but there's something about games being called Doom clones for a long period of time that leads me to believe this guy deserves a spot on the mountain. Can't deny his influence on the industry. Absolutely. And, you know, Doom clone is why I always go back to, like, that we need to, like, be judicial in creating new genre names when new genres come out instead of, like, being derivative like that. That's why I hate Metroidvania and I hate roguelike and I hate, you know, Souls-like. You know, we need to have genres for these new types of games. And maybe I'll talk about that because I do have names for them. I've come up with names for all of those genres and they're pretty good, guys. They're pretty good. His number 3 is Hironobu Sakaguchi. Yes, Tyrone.
Very nice.
He says, I like Final Fantasy a lot, and I especially like the ones he was involved with. They were just better games, and there were a lot less unnecessary zippers. Yes, Tyrone. Yes. He says, this guy made RPGs cool to me, and that's special. You're not going to get any arguments from any of us.
Nope. Which numbers was he?
Oh, he was 1 through 9 and had a little bit of an involvement in 10.
I was wondering if he did 9 too, because they just announced that re-release for the PS4, and it has like the same thing on PC, which was like to speed up the game even, which is great because they don't make you... And you could turn off random encounters at points too, which is an option that should probably be in all RPGs.
I bought it before the podcast, and it also comes with a premium theme, and it is fantastic.
Nice.
Changes the music and changes the menu music to the Final Fantasy menu selection stuff. So it's like beep, beep,
oh
beep.
wow,
it's like, oh,
that's fantastic.
7 did the same thing. If you buy Final Fantasy 7 for PS4, it does the same thing for you. Tyrone's number 2 is Hideo Kojima. Thank you. I'm glad somebody said it. I felt bad for not putting him. He says his games are always cool, and I loved how he was one of the first to really make me feel like I was playing an interactive movie. I think he's influenced the industry a lot, and I don't want to imagine gaming without him. Please don't make me do that.
I think the only reason,
yes.
like, there were so many of these people that, I mean, that ran through my head as having a big role, but they didn't quite have founding father status, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why they didn't make, like, nothing of this is a slight against, like, Kojima or any of these people. It's just... These were the first people to do this stuff.
Yeah. And one of our older episodes, actually before Angela was on, it was back when Rob was still here, we talked about, like, our favorite video game role models, and Kojima was, like, the top of my list. And also, like, he was the first developer where I felt like he was injecting some of his personality into his games. You know, like, a lot of the anti-nuclear stuff in the MGS games are because... Hey, he grew up in the aftermath of that, right? Like he grew up in the 60s. Also, like, his love of movies just, like, permeates those games. I mean, you have a character in Metal Gear Solid 3 who's basically him talking about Godzilla movies for the entire game because, like, he needed to get that out in some sort of outlet.
I mean, it's a same, to think of it in a parallel with what we have, right after 9/11 is when Call of Duty took off, if you really think about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was a whole lot of people that, like, man, we need to defend this country. We need to do this. We need to do that. And it hasn't stopped. Like, there's a whole generation that grew up with that mindset that is, you know, out there playing Call of Duty games.
Yeah.
I think.
Lastly, but certainly not least, Tyrone's number 1 on the mountain is Shigeru Miyamoto. He says, I may not be the world's biggest Nintendo guy these days, but when Nintendo ruled the gaming world, boy did they rule with an iron fist. And this man's games were a big reason why. The fact that he's still making games with crazy new concepts is nothing short of amazing. I actually did a presentation in 6th grade on Nintendo, which basically turned into a Miyamoto shrine. So thanks for that A+, Mr. Miyamoto. Keep doing you. That's awesome. I met him at my first E3, and it was a very brief thing, but I didn't shake his hand, but he shook the hand of the guy next to me, and like he had to be going. It was very clear he was in a hurry, but he still stopped to shake my friend's hand, and I was like, that guy must not get, it must be impossible for him to get anywhere at E3, because that would be the one place where everybody recognizes him, right? Yep. And he was still nice enough to do that. So, really just I mean, he's if he's not the father of video games, but he's kind of the godfather of video games, right? Like, I think that's fair to say.
Sure.
Halo Chief 90, who actually apparently has been listening to the show since we covered Final Fantasy 15 last year. Just hadn't actually, commented on the show, but he's been at Pixelbit since the 1UP apocalypse. So thank you, Halo Chief. I didn't, I always like it when, like, I find out, I've been listening to the show for like a long time, but this is like my first time actually inputting. So that makes me happy.
He's gotten over the threshold.
That's right. His number 1 is Mario. He says anyone who thinks of video games thinks of Mario.
Right.
And I think we've definitely echoed that tonight. Number 2 is Megaman. Belongs right up beside Mario as far as how good his games are. Yeah, I would agree with that too.
Very glad to finally hear Megaman.
You just made Angela very happy.
Yeah.
We'll probably be talking about Mega Man a little later tonight. Solid Snake is number 3. He says Mount Rushmore has a lot of old dudes, right? Solid Snake would fit right in. Yeah, but I guess that's the one. Like, which one do you put though? Like, I would kind of like to put like Metal Gear Solid 1 Solid Snake because he is Solid Snake,
right?
But Naked Snake / Big Boss has been in more video games at this point. So is that the one you put? The one with the eye patch and the beard? Like, Or do you put Old Snake from Metal Gear Solid 4? I mean, you have 4 different selections to choose from because there's 4 different Metal Gear Solid games.
Or do you just troll everybody 4. And put Raiden on there?
I was gonna make that joke. That's perfect.
You carve Solid Snake, but then at some point, like, there's an earthquake, and then it breaks off, and it's just Raiden, and it's that way for the end of time.
That's fantastic.
Halo Chief's number 4 is Master Chief. I guess with the name, like, that seems pretty obvious. He says he's pretty old as well, and he should be right beside Solid Snake. Yeah, again, like, help me understand. Like, maybe Michael117, he's a huge Halo fan too. Like, again, I've played 3, 4, and 5. And I get more of, like, I can understand a love for Cortana, but not so much Master Chief myself. Okay. So, and maybe I'm just missing something. Maybe it's because I didn't play 1 and 2.
So here's the deal, right? Up until this point, first-person shooter has been fast and, very aggressive. This was a totally different direction for first-person shooters to take. The regenerating health thing was new. It felt really good on a console, whereas all these other games felt like PC games that were trying to exist on a console. Even GoldenEye, and I know a lot of people love GoldenEye, GoldenEye was a step in the right direction, but it wasn't the leap forward, I don't think, that Halo was when Halo came out.
Sure.
And simple little things like mapping grenades to their own button, so you could throw a grenade, shoot without having to change weapons. Smart. Mm-hmm. Big deal. Makes a lot of sense. There was a lot of, like, sort of common sense things that happened in there. And also the art style, like, I didn't mention this before, but, like, that art style was something that evolved from Marathon. And that's been, like, sort of, ever since Marathon sort of came out, it's influenced video games. I would say that, we talked about Warframe last time, I would say Warframe steals a lot from the Marathon art style and a little bit from the Halo art style. Like, that has sort of become a sort of way the future looks.
Sure, but you're describing, like, aesthetics and mechanics, where I'm more asking about, like, Master Chief as a character of why people glom onto him so much.
The only reason I could come up with was also aesthetics. I just used to always think that green shiny armor looked cool.
Right, and I thought he looked like a ripoff of the Doom guy. But again, like, maybe it's the books. There might be something that I'm missing here. But I will say that, like, I appreciate that he's a voiced character, because, like, I might take exception if somebody put Gordon flippin' Freeman on here, because it's like, ooh, he's nothing. Like, ugh.
He does have a personality. He does have voice lines, and he's not quite the stereotypical, like, there's a bit to him, though, that is a little bit of that almost country western style. The whole base is being invaded and shot by Covenant, and he just looks at the guy and goes, I need a weapon. Right?
Right.
Like,
man, a few words, but a lot of action.
Right. Where are we going? To give the Covenant back their bomb. Like, that kind of stuff. Like, he's got some great one-liners.
To give Half-Life
and maybe that's... Sorry, I was just saying maybe I missed that because that was like 1 and 2, right? Like I didn't get that. What were you going to say, Patrick?
As soon as Half-Life comes up, we got to give it its due, though. And if there was like an all-female game more, I would probably put Alex on it.
Oh, without a doubt, with zero hesitation for sure.
Yeah, that's the real character.
Yeah. Moving right along, San Andreas says, I've seen 2 approaches to this question: actual gaming figures and gaming characters. If we do the former, number 1 is Shigeru Miyamoto, probably the single most powerful individual in video gaming. Number 2, Hironobu Sakaguchi. Yes, again for the gooch. Popularized RPGs into the mainstream. Not to take away from the likes of Richard Lord British Garriott, I met him. That's me talking, not San Andreas, who did a lot of the earlier pioneering work in the genre. Number 3, good job, San Andreas. Nolan Bush. Oh, sorry. He did Nolan Bushnell too. For some reason, I was reading Ralph Baer in my head. Nolan Bushnell, founder of Atari. He says, like you, Angelo, he didn't invent video games, but he did bring them into the mainstream. And then Kojima, is for number 4. He says, I'm not as big a fan of Metal Gear Solid as other people are, but Kojima has earned his place. And then real quick, he moves on and says, if we're doing characters, I'd put Mario, Link, Pac-Man, and Sonic. So that's real close to yours, Patrick.
Yeah.
Like, that's super close to yours.
Yeah, I mean, Pac-Man, I was thinking, once you said that today, I was even thinking about taking Ratchet out and putting him in, which it could work, but no.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah. No, yeah, I especially coming from you, Ratchet has to be on there.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because not only does he represent, like, Ratchet and Clank, which is one of your all-time favorite series, but it's also, like, he's the PlayStation representative, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you've got your main 3 consoles there. You've got your Sega, you've got your Nintendo, and you've got your Sony, which is like, that's your gaming history right there.
Right. And if you've gone to the other stage select where we talk about the world we would want to be in forever, I also picked the Ratchet and Clank universe. And I think that it fits with, like, the idea that I would like the world to be a theme park or an amusement park. And I think if you went out into an amusement park, those would be before. But Pac-Man could be there too.
Yeah. Casey did what you did, Angelo. He actually says, my picks are going to have characters which best represent each of the presidents we have on Mount Rushmore.
Nice. But he did characters instead of people.
Yes. So he said, Pac-Man for Washington. I'm not sure if Pac-Man was the first video game character, but he's definitely the first mainstream character and the earliest who is still relevant today, so he's up. I would say he probably is, as far as being a character, right? Like, you had like little backstories for, like, the ships and stuff in, like, Asteroids and Space Invaders, but, like, that was done, like, for the home versions and stuff like that. I feel like Pac-Man was, like, that character.
I think you're right.
And I might be wrong, but I feel like that's the case.
I think
they had a name, because Donkey Kong came after, right?
Yes.
So, yeah. So I think that would be correct. Solid Snake for Thomas Jefferson. He says, Jefferson was a guy known for his great writing skills. Metal Gear was the game that changed how video game stories are done forever. Also, both are probably the least iconic of the 4, even though gamers and history buffs will respectively go on about how awesome each is. Mm-hmm. I'll go on for a long time about how awesome Solid Snake is.
I like this.
We can just have one episode on Snake. That's fine.
He says, Sonic the Hedgehog for Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy was a great president, but he isn't half as important as the other 3. He wasn't even the most important Roosevelt. But he had a big personality, which wasn't that common at the time for someone in his position, and handled the position differently than his predecessors, so everybody loves him. If that's not Sonic, I don't know what is.
I would maybe argue about the statements about him not being a very influential president, but okay, we'll do that on another podcast.
No, we won't.
Political one.
Lastly, he puts Mario for Abe Lincoln. Games existed before Mario and America existed before Lincoln, but both saved everything from collapsing and changed how they function on so many fundamental levels. Plus, they both have awesome facial hair.
Yes.
Link is in Lincoln.
Oh, wow.
He also says, if Trump ends up putting his face up there, and you know he'll try, I nominated Dark Souls Knight for his spot, because both have the worst fan bases. I might put Sans from Undertale.
Yep.
Because Undertale might actually have the worst fan base. Yeah, that's fantastic, though.
That is good.
Michael117 doesn't actually... Like, he just lets his selections speak for themselves. So, number 4, Naked Steak with amazing mullet and headband on. Enough said. Number 3, Lara Croft. Number 2, Ellie from The Last of Us.
Hmm.
And number 1, my canon female paragon, Commander Shepard. So that's very personal to him, like it would be carved like his created character.
I think the only difference between mine, if I were to do mine personal, was instead of Nolan Bushnell and Iwatani, it would be Uematsu and Yoko Taro.
Yeah, I can see that from you, definitely. Night Driver, who doesn't comment too often, but I know who does listen to the show, says, the Mount Rushmore 4 shall be Mario for the 80s, Doom Space Marine for the 90s, Master Chief for the 2000s, and Minecraft Steve for the 2010s.
Who's Steve?
He's the dude from Minecraft.
You know what, though?
You know that? No, like, if we're going by, like, decade like that, that fits.
It does.
Like, I have, like, this knee-jerk, like, no, that's wrong, like, in the back of my throat, but it's only because, like, I don't do the Minecraft thing. But this is right. Like, especially when you're taking, like, these specific characters that kind of dominated each decade. Yeah, that seems about right. You could maybe put, no, it's Minecraft.
Yeah, I was thinking, what else could you do there?
I was going to say you could maybe put a character from Dark Souls, but Dark Souls hasn't had the influence that Minecraft has. Apparently Minecraft has sold 144 million copies. That's crazy town.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Notch has like one of the biggest houses out of anybody in the world too.
I wonder if he's happy that he sold out when he did.
Probably.
Because he could have made a lot more money.
No.
Well, maybe not.
He's just one person, though. That's the other thing. He probably at some point said, you know what? I'm able to code this thing. I'm able to do what I did. At some point, I just have to recognize that this thing is bigger than me and hand it off to somebody else. You know what I mean? Like, maybe that was his whole thing behind it. And also, Microsoft literally backed a dump truck into his yard and shoveled money out of it. So I would have said yes.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would love to come up with something that I could sell out for, and just be like, just go ahead and bring the dump truck of money to my house, and you can take it. I don't care what you do with it. I don't even want to know. Yeah. Like, I'm fine with this.
I think what a lot of young people don't realize is, like, when you think about sellouts and you're so mad, like, oh, I can't believe that person sold out. Their first album was so good or whatever. Like, it's hard to sell out or even have people to want you to sell out. And if you have that opportunity, you should probably take it.
Yeah. Over at Twitter, we got a handful for Stage Select. First one comes in from Joe Stepp at Joe Mike Stepp. He's also Super Step on the website. He says Mario because Mario, Master Chief because decade-plus long FPS craze, Solid Snake because lasting cinematic focus, and ESPN commentator Robert Lee. He says, in all seriousness, it's between Pac-Man and a pong paddle for Robert Lee's replacement. And Pac-Man has a face. We'll say Pac-Man.
I don't get the ESPN joke.
That was the thing. He's an Asian guy named Robert Lee, and after the protests, they didn't. Yeah, it was dumb. But he was like, he agreed to it. Like, whatever.
What happened after the protest?
Yep, we're done.
Okay.
This guy named Robert Lee, he's a commentator for ESPN, and he didn't do commentary on one like college game because they felt like his name was too close to Robert E. Lee, and they didn't want to think that it was racist, but it's silly because Lee is like the most common name from, where he's from. And
an Asian man living now doing commentary on a sports game to be confused with a long dead white Civil War, Civil War general.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Calm down, Angela.
It's just so...
This isn't the place.
The universe is crazy.
In some ways, you could think like it could be an announcer because there's so many sports games out there, and those probably had the effect on bros everywhere for starting to play video games in the first place.
But you'd have to put Madden at that point.
Yeah,
like that's the only acceptable person if that's the route you're going down.
Yeah.
Also, John Madden's face carved into stone would be pretty amazing.
I'm sure it's carved into stone somewhere. I'm sure there's a statue of him somewhere.
And he better have a turkey leg.
A turducken leg.
A turducken leg.
He's all about the turduckens.
Oh, is that what it is now? Because it used to be turkey legs. Now he's all about turduckens? Okay.
I think so, yeah. Have you ever had a turducken? Oh my goodness.
Is it good?
Oh.
It's so nice.
Really?
It's so...
Okay.
Oh,
I will
the fat boy in me is just so tickled right now at the thought of eating another turducken.
I will keep your 5-star review in mind, sir. If I ever get offered a turducken.
We got a very rare entry from friend of the show, John Golson, on Twitter, @Golson. He makes it simple. Bushnell, Miyamoto, Iwatani, and Yokoi.
Holy crap.
We've mentioned the first three before, but Yokoi would be Gunpei Yokoi, who is credited for creation of the Game Boy, but I have since learned actually didn't have as big a hand in the creation of the Game Boy as you might think. But is also the main director of Super Metroid. So, yeah, he made my favorite game.
His list was almost the same as mine. That's kind of great.
Yeah.
So he's like the Stanley of video games?
Yeah. We got a new entry, and I don't know if this is just someone who like hit us up on Twitter. I don't know if he's a listener to the show. If you are, welcome. His name is Mike Glennon, and he's on Twitter @Mr. Mike Glennon.
Ooh, the Bears quarterback?
Oh wait, I'm sorry. That was for Chrono Crossing. So we'll get to him at Chrono Crossing. I'm sorry. I should have looked at that earlier. Let's see.
Guys, this announcer thing just made me think of like esports, and I just realized like nobody has represented like an esport game through one of the heads. So I hope this happens with one of the people to come.
I mean, esports are still kind of like an infancy thing, and I mean,
but you could have put like Cazadar from StarCraft or something like that, or like
who? Like that's the thing is that like unless like you're like really following that game, like it's like
yeah. I mean, but
like, I could say Daigo.
Yeah,
I could say Daigo for Street Fighter, but then like there's going to be a ton of people who are just scratching their heads.
Yeah,
right.
Just like something that looks like a Protoss, basically.
Okay. I think we have one last one. Yeah, we have one last one here for Stage Select. It's from our buddy Mike Fallick. He changed his Twitter handle. It's now Big Little Weasel. But he's been on the show a couple times. He does a plethora of podcasts. We actually just recorded a little something for him for his new podcast. I'll let you guys know when that goes up, and we might try to like maybe throw some in as like special features here in case you don't listen to it. I'll ask him what he wants us to do with it. He says Mount Gamemore, Pikachu, 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 and Pikachu, because I spit hot fire. But it would also be adorable. To quote Joe or Angry Joe from YouTube, you done fucked it up, Mike. we had a nice thing going, and then that's all right.
Oh, we might as well stop this segment.
Well, we are stopping the segment because that's the end of the segment. Thank you to everybody who submitted. That was awesome. It ended up being a pretty normal size Stage Select, even though it went faster, but it's because we had so many entries. So thank you. That's a lot of fun. That's why we do this. Angelo.
Oh, crap.
You have the next Stage Select, my friend. Yes.
Let's
lay it on us.
We're all about friendship and bonding, and everybody gets the happy feels, and I want to wreck that. I want to know, and you are going to hate this, I want to know what you think are the 3 most overrated video games.
Oh, this is where the knives come out.
This is where the knives come out, John. Come on, I know like the internet's a freaking salt mine out there. Somebody's got to have some bad opinions about something. 3 most overrated video games.
I know. I just feel like we're kind of like the little oasis of
we will do
fun.
It in a fun way.
I know we will. Excellent. I like that.
Yeah.
I've already got one in mind.
I do too.
The trolls will come out to play.
Yes, they will. People are going to come at me hard too. They're going to be like Final Fantasy 4, Final Fantasy 6, Metal Gear Solid 3. So you can go ahead and plan on getting those submitted by 8:30 Central Time on October the 5th. That's when we will be recording the next episode. You can either go to pixelbit.com and do the comment thread for episode 120, or you can hit us up on Twitter @NWPcast. Our DMs are open in case you have a longer entry.
Slide right in.
That's gonna do it. Yeah, just slide in those DMs. That'll do it for this Stage Select. So let's go ahead and roll on into Consumption Junction. guys, I mean, we've been gone for a while, and we all have, like, tons of stuff to talk about.
Uh-huh.
I would like to go first. I normally don't do this, but I have a reason. I wanted, like, the original plan when we were going to do our original recording was I was going to come on and gloat about how I finally saw a Nintendo Switch in the wild and resisted the urge to buy one. Because I was very proud of myself. Then I went into a store and I found a Nintendo Switch and I bought one.
I knew it!
I have an addiction to new game hardware. And I can pinpoint exactly when it started. It was when we got our demo unit of the Xbox at Game Fellas. I remember the morning that we got it and I was opening it up to plug it into our demo units because we had demo stations for all of the systems. And I was like, I have no interest in this system whatsoever. But man, I really enjoy opening this thing up. It's a brand new system, right? You carefully open it up, you pull out the styrofoam, it's that shiny box and you get all the stuff out and you plug it in just so. And like all of my systems, even my NES, still have the styrofoam, the inserts, the instruction manuals, the baggies, all of them. Like, they're all, I mean, the NES is missing, like, the top styrofoam shell. That's the only thing it's missing. All of my other systems, I can package them like they were new. That's just the way I am with hardware. So I did that with the Switch. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but I will say...
Real quick, neon or the black one?
Oh, the black one.
Okay.
I don't understand the love for the neon. It looks like icy colors.
I understand it only because I have two kids and one's favorite color is red and the other one's favorite color is blue.
Yeah, but these are like this. I mean, it's literally like cherry icy red and blue raspberry icy blue.
The funny thing is they don't want the neon either.
I like the idea at first because it makes it look more like a fun toy or something like that. But if you're bringing it around a lot, it might not look as sleek.
Did you see the limited edition Splatoon one?
No, but I wouldn't be interested in that.
It's like purple and green.
Oh, definitely not.
And then did you see the Mario one? It's red and red.
Yep, that's actually the one we're going to get them.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
I went with the gray, and I also got like a very understated Nintendo carrying case that's dark gray with just like white etchings of like the question mark block, the invincibility star, the fire flower. Like, it looks really nice. I bought it with Mario and Rabbids because that game, I mean, that was what did it, right? And honestly, like, I was going to go see a movie, and it was like an hour until the movie started, so I went to like fart around, and I happened to go to Target. And I had already got it in my head. I was like, if they have a Switch here, I might go ahead and buy one. And they had one left. And it was the fact that there was that one left. And it was the gray one. And I was like, okay, this is happening. And the screen is fantastic. And it's funny because like my lovely girlfriend Jenny, when I told her that I bought it, she was like, well, where are you hooking it up? It's going to the game room or the living room? And I was like, I hadn't even thought about that because I was just going to use it as a portable. And that's like, I haven't even like unpacked the docking station. It's still in the original box. Like, I've only used it as a portable. That's probably how it's going to stay. I will say that, so when the system is on and you attach the Joy-Cons, it does the sound, and that's pretty neat.
Yeah, I like that.
It's on a system level. It's not the actual sound that the things make, but it's on a system level. So that's pretty cool. The screen is fantastic. Like, it's a beautiful screen. I have some problems with the Joy-Cons. I think that the sticks are great. I think the buttons are kind of awful. Like, all of them. Especially the triggers. Like, I've got meaty fingers, ladies. And, like, the triggers do not feel good. So it's like, thinking about them porting Doom to that sucker, I'm like, no, thank you. Like, I don't need that. I just want this for wacky Nintendo stuff and RPGs.
Yeah, you'll have to use the Pro controller for something like that. But I also had trouble with like the L and R buttons or what have you, because I think they're a little bit too close to the ends where my fingers should be like extending a little bit more over the top.
And thin, like very thin.
Yeah, I miss it sometimes when I press down.
Yeah, and I was playing, I bought Wonder Boy, the remake of Wonder Boy 3 as a digital game. And I'll talk about that later. We're actually probably going to do like a special interim episode where we just kind of catch up on games. But, I will say real quick that like Wonder Boy is like a beautiful game, the way they remade it. But, I find myself like having trouble with like button inputs as far as like, it just doesn't feel quite right. And it's weird because I've always loved Nintendo control implements. Even the Wii, which is like a wonky setup, like it felt good in your hands. Mm-hmm. This doesn't feel good in my hands. So I might end up, but I want to use it as a portable. So that's the thing is like, if they come out with like a third party set of Joy-Cons that feels more substantial for people like me, I might end up doing that. But anyway, this is all just a long story to say that I bought it 2 days before I went on a plane to go visit my friends in Colorado. I played it on the plane. I played it before I left. And then I played it on the plane. And I showed it to my friends when I got there. They were like, "Oh, that's cool." And I proceeded to ignore it for the entire time that I was there because I also brought my 3DS because I like to street pass with my friends when I'm there. They're big on getting the puzzle pieces, as am I. But I was like, John Brandon over at the Square Roots podcast had recommended that I play Dragon Quest IV when I talked about getting all of those Square Enix games in that big sale a few months ago. And I'd played it for like an hour and I was like, I'm going to take this and play it on the plane. I beat it.
What's the subtitle for that one? Because I always get these confused.
It's Dragon Quest IV, Chapters of the Chosen.
Okay, that was my favorite one.
Yeah.
And the old ones.
I have to do a big mea culpa when it comes to the Dragon Quest franchise. As I've admitted to many times on the show, I'm like a graphic snob. And with RPGs especially, I like to see my characters. So I was never, like, into the Dragon Quest games up until 8, because, hey, you can see your characters in 8. You can see your characters in 9. And I liked those games, but I didn't finish them. And the older Dragon Quest games always turn me off because you're just looking at a static screen with enemies that don't move. And it's boring, right? Well, the DS version, it's still a first-person perspective, but the animation on the enemies is fantastic. The art on them is fantastic. But also the game itself is amazing because, I had heard about this game where it's like, you do a chapter with a character, and then that ends, and then you do a chapter with another character, and that ends, and so on. And I was like, oh, there must be 4 chapters, and then a 5th chapter where, these 4 characters come together as a party. Oh no! There are 8 characters in this game, which I was not expecting, because I never thought of Dragon Quest as being, like, having a massive party like a Final Fantasy game. Right?
Yep, and one of them is a merchant.
Oh, yes,
He plays a merchant.
Yeah, So chapter 3 is almost like it's not a version of, because it came out before, but I had talked before about Reciteer on PC, which is like one of my favorite PC games, where it's like it's a cute little Japanese RPG where you own a shop for adventurers, but you also go into dungeons and hunt for items to sell in your shop. But you totally do that.
Yep.
As Tornico, who also has his own PlayStation 1 game. In chapter 3 of this game, and it's amazing. And I can't believe that this came out on the NES.
Yep.
Like, it's got so much in there that it's like, even today is like ahead of its time. Like, there's concepts in this game where I'm like, why hasn't this been done since? Like, what's going on here, guys? Why haven't you copied this? This is amazing. So the game was fantastic. I played all the way through it. I almost thought I wasn't gonna be able to beat it because the last boss has 7 forms.
Yep.
7.
That game is ridiculous.
And I fought him for almost an hour at my friend's house, and he was healing himself, and I had this item that turns back time, right? And I'm like, oh, maybe I need to turn back time to the previous turn so that he can't heal himself. But that actually restarted the battle.
Ooh.
And I was I was demoralized. I just put it down, and I didn't finish it until I was on the plane. And even then, I was like, I hope I don't run out of battery before this is done. But I did it just before before I got on the plane. Great game. I am now officially a Dragon Quest fan. So, like, I want to play 5, like, immediately, but I'm gonna play, the new Metroid game first on 3DS. But this is finally the one where I got it. I don't think that I can go back and play, like, 1 and 2 and 3.
Right.
Because I think they're probably a little bit too archaic for me, not having the nostalgia for them. But the DS remakes, and I also want to get 7, for 3DS. I'm a fan, and I was already looking forward to Dragon Quest 11, but I'm looking forward to it even more now, because I think by the time I get there, I'll finally be able to get some of the references. Because, that's the thing with, like Final Fantasy 15 or World of Final Fantasy, they have all these, nice little, callbacks to older games, where if you didn't play them, it doesn't matter, but if you did, you're like, oh, that's really cool. And I've been missing that, on Dragon Quest 8 and 9, so...
I'd like to hear more about, what they are specifically, too, once you guys can both talk about them in a dialogue, and I can just be like, oh, so that's what that is, without spending 500 hours.
Well, that's the nice thing, right? Is that this was an NES era RPG, so I beat it in 36 hours, which is the perfect length for me on RPG. But also, it was cool to play an old school game where it's oh yeah, I need to grind, but I also need to make sure that I'm talking to every damn person, because that's how you figure out where to go next. And there are so many towns in Dragon Quest IV. Every time I would get to a new one, I was like, there's another town? How is there another town? Most of these games usually have 4 or 5 towns. This one has 15 or 16. It's incredible. So anyway, I don't want to go on and on and on, but it's rare these days when a game sucks me in like that. And I literally, that's it's nice that I was hanging out with friends that didn't mind that, we don't have to be doing stuff constantly, right? So there'd be plenty of downtime where it's just I'm playing Dragon Quest for the next 2 hours, and they're watching TV, or, my friend's doing eBay stuff, and we're together, but we're not necessarily, having to, talk to each other the whole time. We're just kind of doing our own thing and having fun being together. And so it was a real nice trip, and so
that sounds great.
I've got tons more to talk about, but I'll save that for another time. Who wants to go next?
Well, I think we've got a lot of hardware to sort out, so I'd like to jump in for at least a minute here. It's gonna be a little bit controversial, but I think I can sway Julian's opinion on homebrew a little bit, because I got a new roommate, because my old friend from college moved out. She was supposed to move out in September and in with her friend from the beginning. But we ended up finding this gem of a video game girl, and with her, she brought a Wii U with every game on it that you would ever imagine being able to play. And those are mostly bought legitimately, but there is homebrew on it that has emulations for other systems as well. I'm not exactly sure how that one works, because there's a lot of other systems I gotta get through. There's a Raspberry Pi 3 that we got, and her brother put together an emulator on it that runs the software called RetroPie. And so you run it, and it has a special mode that is called an attract mode, and on each of the systems they have their own emulator through the emulator. So there's Super Nintendo, Genesis, there's all of the old systems up to N64, and even TurboGrafx stuff, all this Atari things that I haven't seen. There's a couple systems I didn't know the names of. And there were also just packages of games. There's a Pokemon section, and all of them work perfect. There's I think a Street Fighter section, and they all work perfectly through just regular emulated controllers. And in some cases, the Final Fantasy VI, it works better than the emulation on Vita.
I believe it.
And just the fact that it's that dirt cheap to buy a Raspberry Pi, it was awesome that he put it in this small mini Nintendo NES looking case that fits the Raspberry Pi snugly. It's a lot smaller than the NES Mini that came out, or the SNES Mini, but it packs in 10 times the games. It's insane. Everything is on there. And I haven't touched it yet, because I mostly have been playing on the Wii U with legitimate games that they actually bought. But a lot of those games in the emulation, I think that you couldn't even find in the first place. And as far as the hacked Nintendo 3DS that we've got now, which has literally every game ever on there. You just go into it's pretty awesome, because as a computer scientist in the making, or an engineer, I like to use the command line for things in PC and Linux, but you would never think that there was the ability to open it up on 3DS, and that's kind of how you get these things to play. Like you go behind the system in a way that wasn't supposed to be unlocked, I guess, and it makes it pretty easy to just be able to import like little ROMs. But not just regular ROMs. You can seamlessly play ROM hacks, mods, and cheats, and fan translations of like your favorite 3DS games. For instance, on this one, we've got Pokemon Nova Sun and Star Sapphire. You can't see this, guys, but I've got 6 pages of like handouts I'm trying to sift through. But let me just tell you the basic gist of Nova Sun and Umbra Moon. An all-inclusive challenge mode for Pokemon Sun and Moon where all the in-game trainers are redesigned to provide organic challenge to the player while remaining fair in terms of movesets. So everything is thrown at you is legally obtainable around like that point in the game. They competitively hold items and useful moves are made more available without breaking the potential legality of the game. Trade evolutions have alternative methods. Eggs hatch much faster. And optionally, you can turn every non-legendary Pokemon available in the wild for one of those versions. So, like, you don't have to trade between the two and go through the game twice. And the basic same thing happens with Pokemon Rutile Ruby and Star Sapphire, except it also has double, triple, and rotation battles more commonly. Not only that, but there's other like ROM hacks that he added on the system, like in Fire Emblem Awakening, that you can unlock same-sex marriage, which is just, like, progressive, you know? It's not really a hack. It's just something that should be on there to begin with. That they have that for, like, all 3 Fire Emblem versions, and then there's this custom firmware called, like, Luma 3DS on it, where on your SD card, you could put different themes on it, you could add a splash screen at the beginning of it that has like your own custom images and things like that, and it just goes on and on. There's protection on it so that you could update your hack system like risk free, but you can also like do things like overclock it to enable like the 3DS's powerful processor a little bit more, and even improve the frame rate in the old 3DS games, which I'm thinking about doing because I got that old 3DS. But now I've got so many games. Like I'm not going to be able. I wasn't even able to play the ones that I had, and now we got all of them. It's absolutely insane. I've only played like this 3DS once too because I'm telling you, man, the Wii U for at least the next 2 to 3 years, if you've got all the games, can be pretty much the only system you play. It's been so much fun just to get back into Mario 3D World. And I think if you haven't played Mario in a while, you kind of forget how much fun it is and how like lovely and just, I don't know, happy the game is when you experience it. And it's been probably the most fun co-op that I've had with my roommate. Like we mostly play competitive stuff and just get bored of it, or like someone's better than the other person. Like or like someone learns the move sets before the other person even starts, so you can't play Street Fighter. You know,
the thing I remember about Mario 3D World. Now, was that the one? That was the one we could get the cat suit.
Yeah, it's the cat suit. Okay,
the thing I remember about that was when I was first heard about Mario in 3D. That's what I imagined it would be like, right? And then we got Mario 64, which was a great game. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't what I thought I was going to get in a 3D Mario. We didn't get that until that game. And then we did get it, and I'm like, this is so great. This is what I wanted to play as a kid when I played a 3D Mario game. So that was kind of fun. It was really cool.
And I like the return of the Tanuki suit in big form. You get to use that a lot, but the cat suit was more fun than I realized, especially when you have to use the cat suit to claw at like a wheel that turns to bring it up, and you wouldn't be able to otherwise. But there's a lot of places you can climb only with the cat suit that make it pretty fun. I'd just rather always have the Tanuki suit, especially with the mythological reasoning behind why you call it that and not a raccoon. Mm-hmm. And I just to go back to the 3DS for a minute though, like I got my start on that kind of the Mario with 3D Land, and I really loved that, and that's what got me into the 3DS itself. But there's so many powerful things in this hacked version, like through, they call it Rosalina, that I would never even thought of. Like, it has a menu where you could capture screenshots, where you running processes, like a system log, you can enable or disable the Wi-Fi or disable the overclock mode, and use controllers with the aid of a PC. And you can activate it by pressing like down L and select at any time once you have it on there. It's just crazy. There's all these pre-installed homebrew apps including a version of Doom, of course. It's called PR Boom 3D SX. It's a port of Doom to the 3DS. It's funny. He printed out all these different apps and like defined what they were and stuff for me and friends that he's made it for, but he doesn't like profit off of it. Just like whatever the cost of the parts is, it's kind of like just has fun doing it. You know, when you're kind of a hacker, it's kind of like a community where you just want to open up doors for people. And on this, there's also a quasi meme among homebrew developers to put Doom on everything. And we kind of talked about that earlier with like it being on the LCD printer or whatever. Mm-hmm. But there's also like apps called FBI or things like that install a CIA file format, which is standard for 3DS games, where it manages like your 3DS SD card and internal memory for installing and uninstalling all the different things without like really having to worry about them seeing if you're breaking the law or not. So it seems like there's kind of like foolproof ways around Nintendo being able to brick your system. And I mean, it's not on mine. Luckily, it's on the new 3DS Black Friday version that I wanted and lamented that I didn't get when I went to, I think it was Target, you know, the one with like all the different Mario symbols etched in it. Oh, man, it works so much better than my launch day 3DS. It's great that it's just always in the room there now, and I could play all these terrible, terrible games because we have all the bad ones installed on there too. And let me tell you, SpongeBob is a great cartoon, but the worst game I've ever played.
I believe this.
And this is on the Wii U, but like, I mean, we just have a bunch of fun games. We have 7 Just Dances that I will never touch. Right? But on the first level of this SpongeBob game, all you could do is press square and he slaps people with a hand, and all you could do is go forward in like the biggest like tunnel I've ever seen underwater. It's just walking forward, jumping over a log and hitting another guy with your big hand for as long as I could play before I just had to stop. And there was no SpongeBob wit, there was no cinematics, which should be most of the SpongeBob game, you know, maybe some QTE or something like that, just watching the fun. But yeah, it's fun to be able to play stuff like that you would never pay money for and you know is bad in the first place, just for a good time. But also it's great to be able to open my world up for stuff like Pikmin 3, because that's more niche video game territory that like I wouldn't even get to for a long time after I had the system. But in this, it was like, I've been wondering about that game for a long time. They already bought it. So I got to go right into her version of, or his, I'm not sure whose is whose. She's more of an RPG player. She played all the Final Fantasies and Personas and has her Vita upstairs where she's doing that right now. But yeah, when you get to play Pikmin 3 for the first time, it's kind of like a whole new way of thinking about games. And honestly, I could only do like one day at a time because it was like hurting my brain the way that I was having to like think about using them as resources and throwing them. Also, I'm left-handed, and kind of the throwing aspect of it on the Wii U controller is more right-handed. You can't flip it. But I've just been having so much fun with all these games, and that's just like a cursory glance at them. But we also got really into Hyrule Warriors, which it was better than I thought. It had a better story so far than I thought it would. And that is something you can play with friends too, because like Dynasty Warriors, I think there's co-op. We've only played one at a time, but oh man, it's so much fun to do that. Finally use my amiibos, and I haven't even touched Breath of the Wild yet.
You should.
I know, but
you should touch it.
I try to only touch it once or twice a day. No, but
I'm so angry right now.
Yeah. Oh man, Julian is brewing. But You got to understand,
I'm
like 80.
seething right now.
You got to understand, 80 to 90% of the games that I've played were actually bought. I haven't gotten in.
I don't care.
Into the homebrew yet. But
don't care, and don't call it homebrew because homebrew is an entirely different thing.
Homebrew is when somebody
homebrew
actually
is like
makes something.
Homemade video games. Yeah.
Well,
this is straight up piracy,
dude. What they put on a piece of paper doesn't mean jack.
I'm just
that's the honest truth.
What I see, but
I understand.
I'm going by the actual definition of homebrew versus piracy.
Well, when I talked about the
clean and simple.
Pokemon versions and the Fire Emblem versions, and
I don't have problems with that. That's like basically like modding. Like I don't like that's another thing entirely.
And you should see these.
I'm talking about having every video game on a Raspberry Pi.
You should see the custom themes and badges and music. Well, I could never play many of those older games because they're going for so much money. So,
exactly. So you don't get to play them. I'm sorry. I worked retail for 8 years. Like, there are people who still make money on those video games, even if it's not the company itself. And these days, more often than not, those companies are still making game money on them because you can buy them digitally on different storefronts. Like, I got into a really long Facebook war with someone who, after they announced the Super Nintendo Classic, he was like, don't buy the Super Nintendo Classic. Like, just get a Raspberry Pi and play it because Nintendo doesn't care. They don't want your money. And I was like, just because you don't like Nintendo's practices doesn't give you carte blanche to steal games. I'm sorry, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
And like, we just went back and forth on that forever. And it's like, I'm sorry, like, no, you're hurting somebody somewhere. There are people who make their living off of selling old video games on eBay or Amazon or in stores. You know, I literally just paid $80 for Dragon Quest VI on the DS at my local, like, mom and pop game store because apparently it's hard to find. I looked it up on Amazon. It was going for $115 brand new, and this was brand new for $80, so I went ahead and snagged it. Just because it's expensive doesn't mean that I'm like, oh, well, I'll just go ahead and go home and download that, which is literally what somebody told me online. They were like, you should go ahead and sell that, pocket the extra money, and then just download the ROM. And I was like, hell no, I buy my games.
See, I'm not for that, and I never have not bought one of my games. These are all not my games. They happen to be here, but
I know.
But
I'm not condemning you. I need to take a hard stand on this because people listen to this show, and I want to make it crystal fucking clear that I do not agree with this.
Okay, I don't agree with like Nintendo business practices, like going one game at a time. Though I think it should be more like more Spotify oriented, where you pay residuals to the game you're streaming, and you can emulate all these things onto one system. Like, it just makes it easier to put everything in one place. And I can't add more things to my room at this point. I want to consolidate. And if there were like a way I could do that legally, like Spotify, which I do pay for now, and I don't steal music either, yeah, I would do that.
Here's the thing, though.
If you own the video games and you want to go ahead and consolidate them into a singular thing, and you just want to have like your entire collection in this thing, but you have every single one of those games to back it up, I'm kind of on board with you there. Because at least you own those video games. But if there is even one game on there that you're just like, oh, I just threw this in because I've never played it before. No.
But what if it's
sorry.
What if it's like Spotify, where every time you play the game, like the part of your monthly fee goes to that specific developer, like the musician?
Well, if you're paying for something, then sure, but you're not paying for anything here.
No, I mean, I'm just saying I would do that if it were available. And I mean, I'm not talking about PlayStation now because that sucks, but like if
and arguably, like I am very much of the mentality that Nintendo has messed up with their Virtual Console, because every game that's ever been on Virtual Console should be available on every single Virtual Console. There's no excuse for that. Like, I fired up my 3DS shop the other day, and I was like, holy crap, Super Metroid is on, like, the eShop? And I was like, oh, it's only for the new 3DS, right? And it's like, but the 3DS can handle frickin' Super Metroid. There's no reason why it should be gated. Like, every single game that's on Virtual Console, on the Wii, on the Wii U, on the 3DS, like, you should be able to buy those for every single one of those systems, and they should all cross-platform.
But at the end of the day, it's their game, it's their hardware, and they can do what they want.
Yeah, they're doing it in my opinion, a poor way.
See, once you buy it, though, isn't it your hardware too? That's why you can like install these like things, which some of them aren't.
It's your hardware, but that isn't your software, Patrick.
Right.
So, well, I don't know. That's sort of a digital rights management like issue that.
That's not really an issue. That's kind of
that's
once you pay for it.
I'm sorry.
I don't know. Well, there's some of the software on here is like wirelessly capture video, like through.
That's fine. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about that, Patrick. We're only really talking about. Yeah, that stuff is cool. I'm talking about video games that no one paid for that are on that machine.
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. Like you tell me that all those games on the Wii U are legitimately purchased. I find that to be a little bit sketchy because if they have like all the Wii U games on there, like. That's really kind of weird to me.
No, you could tell like which ones have been loaded in and which ones haven't. So I could see the one. There's like different kinds of icons.
So there are some that aren't legit on there.
Yeah,
is what you're saying. Okay, so that's bullshit too. I'm not condemning you. I'm not condemning your friend. I'm just saying that I want to make it very clear. Like you're on that side of it. I'm on this side of it. I just want to like make it crystal clear. Like this comes from me being a retailer for a really long time, being interested in getting into development for a really long time, and also being a collector for a really long time.
Right.
Like,
I'm a big collector.
Like on all three of those points, this pisses me off.
But I'm a big collector for stuff too. I don't collect those really hard to find video games because I want to play them. Or like when I would buy them and then probably play the emulated version instead of opening it or something like that because I've opened too many that are worth so much now that I don't know. So I'm kind of on the fence for stuff like that, but it is really cool when like there's God Mode 9 that you can unlock on your 3DS and you could convert all your cartridges that you have into the CIA files that I was talking about and install them to the home menu, or you could dump and decrypt your eShop and cartridge games to use on a PC. So you could tell they could enable cross-platform support if they had Microsoft's say so. But that's kind of been another fun issue in like recent days with the way Fortnite just unlocked the cross-plat support.
I heard about that.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was pretty cool.
We're at a weird time for stuff like that where the developers totally could enable this easily, but our like people who own the systems just don't. I mean, it's pride, maybe.
It's. I'm going to guess more than anything it's Sony being Sony because they have the high ground right now, so they can afford to.
Their Obi-Wan.
What's that?
Their Obi-Wan.
Yeah. Oh, maybe in more ways than one. But yeah, like I want.
There's going to be one in more ways than one.
Anyway, they don't have to make any concessions to anyone. They know people will buy their hardware, and they know that they will sell whatever, because right now they are the top. They are the top console. They have nothing to gain. They don't have anything to lose either, in my opinion. But they don't have anything to gain by doing this, so they're just not going to do it.
I think they do, though. I think both companies have something to gain because
they don't think they do.
When this generation started, like let's be fair, the 360 was a juggernaut last generation, right? Like PS3 eventually caught up, but the 360 was the king of the roost for the majority of that generation. But when the PS4 came out and the Xbox One came out, people fragmented. So you had people you had dedicated friends from Xbox Live who were now on PlayStation, right? And then some people who stayed behind on Xbox. Mm-hmm. So there could be a lot of multiplayer games where it's you're on PlayStation, but let's say 3 of your buddies stayed on Xbox. Well, you can't play with them anymore. But if you could, maybe you would buy that multiplayer game on PS4 that you were going to avoid.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can play with your old buddies again that you had so much fun playing Gears of War 2 with back in the day, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. I think in that situation, there's more software to be sold than they're thinking.
With you, and that makes complete sense to me. But Sony is sitting there thinking, well, if they want to play it so much, they should buy a PlayStation. That's just how they're thinking.
Yeah. But it's that kind of thinking that kind of messed them up in the PS3, that hubris.
It's that kind of thinking that makes people go to PC. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
That's what generates PC gamers.
It's that kind of thinking that kind of ruined my cooperative play in college because I had so many friends who made the mistake of buying the 360.
That wasn't a mistake.
Nope.
I think, for me, there was way more on the PlayStation 3.
$599, Patrick. That's what they pitched that thing at. I will mention that every time this conversation comes up. They really botched that launch.
Yeah, I think I bought it at $4, $3.99.
Yeah.
But
and I mean, let's be fair. Like the exclusive library on the PS3 is pretty epic. Like 90% of my PS3 games are exclusives, right? But I have a much larger overall 360 library. Because a lot of the third party stuff was better on the 360, and then the 360 had a lot of great exclusives also. So,
yeah, definitely way more than the one.
It's the opposite. It's the opposite this generation.
It is.
Yeah, and maybe that'll catch up. They're trying, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I do want to just wrap up on this 3DS hardware, because there's a couple more cool things that you can't do on a 3DS that aren't necessarily illegal either, that I think you'll think are cool. One of them is, well, it's quasi this Super Mario 64 online thing that Nintendo just shut down, except there's a way you can install a homebrew entry point into like Nintendo's Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D cartridge, where you can get a friend to come into the game as well. So you could actually co-op Ocarina of Time. You could do that with Sticker Star Saga as well, and some other game I don't know called Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon. But so yeah, there's like a few ways to get like an extra person into the game itself, and I think that's cool. Could have been opened up. I mean, it'll break the game, but just for fun, for one time, it's kind of like if you can go into the console and just like add like one line of code, and that's basically what it is. It'll install the entry point. That's kind of a fun little thing to do, and something you do with a game you already have. And finally, with this, call it software, I guess it's not homebrew.
Well, you're talking about homebrew now. You're talking about custom-made stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's custom themes, badges, and music like for the screen, which a bunch of different hackers have like made, and you can download, which is awesome. And you could back up and edit all those files. But maybe the coolest thing for Julian here would be that you can bypass the region lock and play out of region games.
That is cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, I mean, we used to do that all the time at Game Fellas. Like, I did the hot swap method on my PS1 more times than I can count. And I was really bummed that the PS2 never had a really good way to play import games for Americans. Like, you basically had to buy a Japanese PS2 in order to play any imports.
Yeah.
Now, are there any 3DS imports that you would want to play? I don't know about this option even until now, so...
I don't know, because I've never really looked into it. I know that I wanted to get the Japanese sequel to Elite Beat Agents for DS. I mean, I think the DS is region-free. It was a 3DS that was locked. Because Nintendo's portables used to be wide open until the 3DS, if I remember correctly. It was their home consoles that were always locked. But I just want to say, like, just to lighten things up, because like my favorite part of this whole segment was that Patrick could see the look of disappointment and just sternness on my face, and he just kept talking like a kid who knows that he's in trouble, but he's just like trying to talk his way out of it as fast as he possibly can. And that was probably my favorite part of this, because he knows, like, we had a whole episode about piracy, and he knows where I stand on this, but he was just like, no, but see, if you do this and this, it's like really cool, right? And then there's this and this and this, and you can't be mad at me, right? It's like, no, I can be mad. I'm so disappointed right now.
Well, when it just falls into your lap, it's great. And when you don't do any... Like, I could have hacked all this stuff, like, years ago, but I never have. One, because I'm not that greedy. I mean, I've got enough, and I've bought thousands of dollars worth of shit that all went to people who have more money than me. But that's okay. I had fun. And I still have never pirated a game. What? Oh, wait. No, I did one time on PC.
Yeah, I think you admitted that. You admitted that on that episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did too when I was in college, but...
I will say that if that fell into my hands, I would fart around with it for a little bit, because I would mainly be wanting to see if the emulation is any good. Because that's the other thing with this emulation stuff. And even Nintendo's Virtual Console is some of these games just don't play quite right as the originals. And that's why, like, I like to play my original games on original hardware, because that's how you're going to get the true experience of playing them. Because, you know, things get wonky when they get translated into different places. And there is some fun stuff to be had there. Like I'm definitely going to be setting up, like downloading the, like translation packs for Seiken Densetsu 3 and Bahamut's Lagoon, because now I have a Retron 5, and you can actually load those translation packs into the Retron and play them with the original cartridge. So I've owned those Super Famicom games for like over 10 years, over 15 years. And like, I would like to play those in English sometime, and it looks like it's never going to happen. So, that's a fun way to do that.
Do you have Tales of Phantasia?
I do not.
You might want to look into that just because, again, backing up, I did steal this game in college because I don't know if I didn't know any better or what. I think digital rights and stuff like that was kind of up in the air at the time.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know about this stuff until I started working retail.
Right.
Like, let's be fair. I didn't understand.
This was the freaking 90s, for goodness sakes. Really, it was. But I was just mind blown by what that was doing on we were not talking about an FX chip game here. And it had a vocal soundtrack in places. And it had, just effects that were just... It was the SNES without the extra processing perks at the top of its game. So it's a pretty cool thing to see. And plus, some of those fan translations are pretty fun. Like, I mentioned that before.
Yeah. And it makes me want to, now that I can do that, it makes me want to, seek out, older Fire Emblems, right? For, Super Famicom and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because we're probably not going to get those over here. Or if we do, they're going to be, the one that just came out, which is, a complete reimagining of the game, which is fine.
Yeah.
But, sometimes it's fun to, experience the original game, but I don't read Japanese, so.
Yeah. And I would love to see what Bahamut's Lagoon is all about. I really would. That'd be
strategy
fun.
RPG.
Yep. Those are so hit and miss with me and mostly miss. But I would still like to see what that was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the other part of it is, so sometimes, and that Julian may frown on this, but I will tell you what I do is, if there's a game that's really expensive, I want to know if I'm going to enjoy playing it before I spend $70 on a freaking cartridge.
Yeah.
And by that I mean, I will sometimes try it out in an emulator and figure out if I like it. And then be like, all right, I want to buy this game. Because at the end of the day, I want to play it on the hardware. I want to play it with a controller. I want to play it on the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done that with a couple of games here and there. But, yeah, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's protect your wallet type of deal.
Yeah.
But I feel like we're also in an age now where there's so many ways to figure that out. Because we've all played enough video games over time to where you can look at a YouTube video of a game and be able to tell, I feel that I can tell, by watching a game.
I would argue on platformers and shooters, things that require really precise controls, you do need to feel that. And that's, maybe the emulator isn't doing a very good job. Who knows? But, that's what I did with Musha, and that's how I know, I heard the music from Musha, I need to see what this game is like. And I saw it on YouTube, and I'm like, all right, I need to actually play this to know if I want it, because wow, is that cartridge expensive. But I can go get the Japanese version, patch it, play it that way, and that might be a little bit cheaper. You know what I mean? There's other ways to... but I still did that. I still did download it and play it a little bit to see if it was something I wanted, because, boy, is that cartridge... Go look up and see what the American version of that costs. Now that I want it, I would find a way to support that, probably.
I think you're right. There's not really exploiting the game there, unless you're like, I don't really think I want to buy it, but I'm going to play through the whole thing just to make sure. Then you're just
lying. I'm not trying to justify this. Some people have only discovered games because they had a pile of emulated things to go through. I'm not saying this is okay. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to go down this path.
$315.
Yep.
I'm seeing one for $519.
Yep, for Musha, right?
Yeah. That's insane.
Now you understand why I might say, before I want to spend any money on this, let me see what this actually feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I am seeing a Mega Drive one that's going for $45.
And that's what I'm talking about. You can go get the European version.
Although this might be a repro now that I'm looking at it, because it has Sega Genesis logo on it. So yeah. Anyway,
but just
I love you, Patrick.
Yeah, and I haven't done necessarily anything wrong yet.
Yeah, it's more it's a very passionate thing for me.
I know.
With the video game industry.
Well,
that's why I wanted to bring it up. Get that fire.
Right, but you have to understand that people literally their livelihoods live and die on this, and that's why people get really upset about.
Yeah.
And also and this isn't Patrick, and we talked about this on the piracy episode, but there's our buddy Bob over at TNB, he does it all the time. He pirates tons of games. There's this mentality where it's oh, I'm so angry at so-and-so because they did this, and I'm not going to buy their game. I am going to pirate it and play it, though.
Yep.
Because, they don't deserve my money, but I deserve to play their game. And it's no. If you're that angry about it, don't play it.
Right.
Or maybe go rent it.
that I have literally seen people go, well, you shouldn't play this game. This is the best, like 4X space game out there, but you shouldn't buy it because I don't like what this person said on Twitter. So here's the link to pirate it. Or I have seen this, right? Like,
DMC.
You don't need to play this game because here's the ending for it because I don't like this person's political views. Like,
DMC, or just because you don't like the game, like people like DMC, like by Ninja 3 was the first game where I really saw this in spades, where people were like, "I hate what they did with Dante. I'm not playing this. I'm not going to buy this game, but I am going to play it." And it's like, "F you, man! Like, if you don't like it, just don't play it." You know, but maybe you should give it a try because it was actually a pretty cool game.
Yeah, I love that.
If you just get over yourself.
I got that on Steam. I'm going to play it.
Actually,
maybe.
That was one of the few games that after I beat it the first time, I started playing it through like the second time right away because I knew how well I started to combo and almost endless combo, and it just every single time you have a big combo and you're like, oh, I could do just a little bit better. And there was a couple of areas in the first level that I could go back to where I might be able to reach now. Like there's so many things that unlock just by unlocking moves in Dante, and I don't care if he looked a little different or act a little bit more douchey. That's kind of fun sometimes.
He is obnoxious. Yeah. I will give them that.
But he's always been obnoxious.
He has
let's
been,
be fair.
But he's been... It's a different flavor of obnoxious. It's a worse flavor.
I haven't played a lot of the game, but what I did play, but I was like, okay, there's more going on here with his character than there was before.
There is.
You know, he's got more depth. It might not be like the type of person you want to hang out with, but at least he seems more fleshed out and real than the, older Dante, where he's just like one-liner, you know.
You know what it felt like, though? It felt like somebody read a bunch of articles on millennials and said, let's make Dante appeal to millennials. That's what it felt like to me. Like, it felt very insincere.
Were we banding about the millennial label when that game was being made?
No,
I feel like that hadn't been a thing yet.
But you know what I mean? Like, that's what saying what it feels like isn't necessarily, like, in context. No, that's probably not how it worked. But, like, hey, what would be the most, let's appeal to the kids, and then the meme, hey, how do you do, fellow kids, appeared, and that was the new Dante. You know, that kind of thing. Which also didn't exist back then, but you get the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to wrap up, I was thinking about what Angelo said in terms of playing the game on the emulation before you bought it. I think sometimes you need to play the game on the native system to actually, or whatever system you're going to. You can't watch it because sometimes those emulations play poorly. So if you're going to get something that's similar to it, you actually need to be able to play it. I don't know if that could skew your view on the game, because I know, like, I didn't like Final Fantasy VI when I played it on the Vita because of how slow it was going, but I played the virtual console version and it worked perfectly.
Yeah.
So, like, good on Nintendo.
Right.
But I feel that that's where research comes into play. And, and my thing is that, like, okay, Musha is a $315 to $500 video game, right?
Right.
I'm not going to play Musha.
Right.
Like, that's just all there is to it.
Yeah.
I own a game that is worth probably $500 to $600. I don't know how much because I've never seen a complete version, and that's what I have. And it's Panic Restaurant for NES. If I didn't own it, and I always wanted Panic Restaurant ever since I saw Nintendo Power, it looked like it was the coolest game. But if I didn't own that right now, I would just say, okay, well, I missed out. Like, I'm not going to pay that, but I'm also not going to steal it. Like, I'm just I might watch some YouTube playthroughs just to see what the game was like, so I can at least know what the game is, but I'm just going to leave it there, and I'm fine with that.
Like, Musha is literally the only game I have done that with since I was in college, and it's because it's $500. It costs more than a console.
Yeah. Now, and just, we've gone on this for a long time. Yeah. Now, the only place where I bend on this is like MAME and arcade emulation, simply because you can't buy every arcade game. You can't even buy most arcade games. Like, you can't own, like, arcade machines. So, like, and those are games that are lost to time, right? Like, there are so many arcade games I didn't even know existed, stuff like that. And for the sheer form of like video game preservation, like I'm glad that stuff is out there.
Yeah, on that Raspberry Pi emulator, I'm so happy you said that because I forgot to mention the arcade games are there. Like the Simpsons arcade game that started it all for me.
You can buy that from Konami now on the 360.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about stuff that you can't find anywhere. Like there was never a port. It's never been re-released anywhere. It was only a cabinet, and that cabinet is like there's very few of them even in the wild anymore because it wasn't even a popular game to begin with. Like that stuff needs to be preserved, and you should be able to play it. Like
the Outfoxies or something like that. Or
okay, I don't know those games even to begin with, but I'll check on.
Check that one out, actually.
Outfoxies. There was this Desert Storm era game that played just like Mercs, and I've only played it once, and it was in Steubenville, Ohio, back when I visited when I was like 11, 12, and I don't even know the name of it. I just remember it was Desert Storm themed, and it was an overhead shooter just like Mercs. It was really cool. I think it was a 3 or 4 player game, and like I would like to play that game again, but good luck finding that. Angela, did you want to hit a couple things up
Sure.
quickly?
So speaking of controversial things, how do you feel about AM2R?
What is it?
Another Metroid 2 remake, Patrick, for your... It was a PC released version. Let me just explain what it is, because Patrick might not be the only person who doesn't know. Right. It was a PC released version of Metroid 2, built from the ground up, from scratch, but it played like Super Metroid.
And Nintendo shut it down, and no one understood why. And then, they were actually remaking Metroid 2 on the 3DS.
Yep.
So they didn't, obviously, there's that.
Yep.
I think it was cool, and I think that Nintendo actually should have either hired those guys or bought it and made it either a digital release or packed it in with the 3DS game. It's intellectual property. You could say that it was a dormant intellectual property because Nintendo appeared to not care about Metroid at all up until this last E3. So I can understand where they're coming from. I kind of feel like it's in the mod category.
Yeah.
A little bit.
So here's the funny thing. I had downloaded AM2R and not done anything with it. And then, then I had heard about people talking about the Metroid 2 remake. And I'm like, that's right. I have AM2R. I wonder what that plays like. And I didn't even play through the whole thing because I have a cartridge version of Metroid 2. And I wanted to see how the two compared. So I played a little bit just to do it, like the back and forth. I played a little bit of the cartridge version of Metroid 2. And I played AM2R. And holy crap. It's really good.
It's actually probably better than the 3DS version. I'll talk about that another time. I have things to say about that game.
I have not played that, and I have every intention of picking it up. I really do, but I have every intention of picking up a lot of games and not enough money to pick them all up right now.
So hack them. No. And now we've gone back
to the podcast right around.
Now we've gone right back to the beginning.
So what they did was really smart. Like they added the ability, like, in Super Metroid, how you can kind of like angle your gun at a 45-degree angle or down like quarter at the ground. You can do that in this, and it kind of breaks the game a little bit. Like it makes some of the encounters a lot easier, but at the same time, it doesn't. It's really weird because it doesn't alter the challenge of the game. Those encounters are easier regardless of whether or not you can adjust the game with your gun. Like, they're not the encounters that matter, if that makes sense. All the encounters that matter are still challenging. It's It's crazy. And in some places, they like, okay, so here's what this area feels like. It feels like this big open area, even though, on freaking Game Boy, they can't really capture a big open area. They were really good about inferring different things from the Game Boy game than what the Game Boy game was actually giving them. It is really cool. Like, that is the best way to explain it. You go to a section and you get like a bit of lore dump, like, hey, you found an ancient temple of some kind. Who knows what's in it? And in the Game Boy game, they didn't give you any of that stuff. You just walked into an area and it was an area like any other. Maybe the tile set was a little bit different, but the game didn't explain any of that to you. How could it? I would say about less than 50% of it is an exact one-for-one conversion of the cartridge game, but a lot of it is just, this is what this area feels like if you inject some imagination into it. And it doesn't break the flow of the game, and it doesn't break the feel of the game. You still get the spider ball stupid early, which I still think is amazing. And no other Metroid game does that, and it still feels like real cool that you can roll everywhere and just explore everything and still have a hell of a time finding anything because it's an early Metroid game. And they kept that feel in AM2R. So they did a really good job on this.
Can I say, just by like the thought of like how you're explaining this to me parallels the early days of bounty hacking, or when you're like exploiting different systems, like showing penetration defense or penetration attacks that aren't able to be defended on certain enterprises, and how early on like hackers were like prosecuted for things like these. And now we're getting to the point where like big companies are even asking you to like take down their system so they can pay you like a ransom for it. I think like these kind of like ground up remakes or mods should eventually just be like bought like by those big companies. Or
Capcom did that.
Yeah,
Capcom bought a mod somebody made of a Megaman game that had Street Fighter characters in it, right?
Yeah.
And I reviewed it for Pixelbit a long time ago.
That's right. The lead designer on Sonic Mania was actually a guy who had done like a homebrew Sonic game that was like stupid faithful to the old Sonic games, and Sega was like, hey, you kind of understand how these games play more than the people we have working for us these days, so why don't you come on board? Like, I think that's a better idea. I wish they had done that with the people who made this really awesome Streets of Rage port that they actually just like shut down. They should have just said, hey, people want Streets of Rage from us. You already kind of made it. Why don't we like pay you for your work and maybe bring you on to flesh this out into a bigger retail thing and let us go ahead and do this. Like, I think there's a place for that stuff. Like, really, to me, I know they're kind of done as like passion projects, right?
Yeah.
But to me, they should almost be like auditions. Like, hey guys, we did this thing better than you do. Here you go. Hire me. Hire us. Hire my team, right? Some of these companies need to get smarter about that. I think Nintendo is still just so stuck in their ways.
Like, Nintendo could have their own subsection of the eShop that just is like passion projects where those developers get a portion of the proceeds that's smaller than it would be for like a game that was with their own IP or something, because instead they just shut down versions of Pokemon games that have entire new types of Pokemon. I think we talked about it a while back, but there was another Pokemon game that came out that had nuclear Pokemon, and I think that's like one of the coolest types of Pokemon that doesn't exist in the world. And I just really feel like they should flesh out that story a little bit more. I think it was Mike who talked about how depressing and dark that Pokemon world really is, and I think those things could come to the forefront if there was like a new writer that wasn't official. We could just have like a fan service subsection of the eShop with all these things Nintendo.
Yeah. Like, I don't think this works for Nintendo, but companies like Capcom and Konami, especially Konami, because they're not doing jack with any of their properties. What if you could pay like $500 to Konami and say, I want to make a game based on the Contra franchise. If I finish it, and it's good, maybe you can option it and sell it. If not, I'm not going to make anything from it, but I've already paid you for the license, right? So I can at least release it. But maybe they can say like, oh, well, you did the work for us. This is actually pretty good. We're going to go ahead and release this digitally, and we're going to give you a cut of the money, right? Like, I really do think that Konami especially should just set up an office in the United States where they're like, hey, here's the prices for these IP if you want to develop for them. pitch us, let us know, and we'll let you know if we like what you're talking about, and then move forward, because we're not doing anything with it. But, if it doesn't cost us any cash other than just like paying you for your work after the fact, that's not bad, right? It's a complicated subject. It's funny though, Angela, because I have a copy of Metroid 2 for Game Boy also, and I'm thinking about firing up my SP this week and playing the first couple hours just to see how it matches up to the 3DS version. Because I definitely am remembering certain areas, but it's hard because, it's in color and in 3D, and I might be misremembering, but I'm like, I kind of remember how I got around this before, which is weird because I only played it once back when it was new.
Yep. I didn't get far enough. I got to where you fought the first of and I did beat this thing, and then I was just like, all right, I probably played enough of this to get the good idea of how it feels. But the second, so there's the base Metroid, then there's the first evolution of the Metroid, then there's the second. Mm-hmm. And I had just basically beaten up the first time you see the second evolution of a Metroid. And then I was like, okay, cool, we're good. I got the spider ball and all that stuff. I do want to see how this particular thing handles switching between the weapons, because I remember in the Game Boy version, you had to find a power-up every time you wanted to switch the weapon type. From Ice Beam.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That?
Well, yeah, because the original Metroid was like that.
Which is terrible.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, it sucks. But it made it was a very forced game type of thing. Like, we need to limit the player's abilities in this area. Here's how we're going to do it. Type of thing. And it did feel forced, more so than anything else in that game did. But I wonder if they did something else to work around that. Like, once you get all these other types of beams, can you just switch between them? That'd be kind of neat. It looks like you can based on the menu system, because it's the Super Nintendo version of you have Samus in her armor image, and you pick the things you want to turn on and off. So maybe they do it that. Maybe I'll keep playing it. I don't know. But other than that, as far as video games go, so I picked up a whole bunch of new games on Steam. I got like 3 free games from various promotions.
Nice.
One of them was Psychonauts, which is great because I didn't have to pay any money for Psychonauts, and that makes me feel good. So anyway, all of that to say, I got all these cool new games, and I ended up playing Doom again anyway. And I don't mean new Doom, I mean 90s Doom.
Oh my god.
Now
it's 2016 all over again. It's all Doom
funny.
again.
It is. I played it with the Brutal Doom mod, which is my new favorite and best way to play Doom, which, man, playing it yet again made me realize how much they ripped it off for the new Doom. Because I don't know if you realize this, but in Brutal Doom, if you incapacitate an enemy but it's not dead, you can walk up to it, perform an execution, and gain health.
You had mentioned that last year because you had started messing around with Brutal Doom.
Like, I'm just shocked. I'm not, because this is their property and they can do what they want, but they didn't even throw the guy a bone. Like, they really pulled a lot of his ideas, and that...
The thing with that, though, is that, like, video games are iterative, right? Like, everything
I'm not mad about
builds... Yeah.
I just wish they had said something like, kudos to so-and-so for Brutal Doom because it really inspired us. Like, just throw something in there, and they didn't do that. I don't know.
Right.
It would have felt a little bit better if they did. But anyway, Brutal Doom...
Like, maybe a special thanks to,
Yeah.
Now, did you get every secret in the first level?
Well, no, let me roll back a little bit, because I am really familiar with classic Doom, like original Doom. Like the first 3 original episodes. Not Doom 2, which is, I think, a lot of people's touchstone, with the double-barreled shotgun and all that good stuff. I played that in Brutal Doom on freaking Ultraviolence, which is the difficulty I used to play on, which is the one right before Nightmare. And I just blazed through it. I was at over 100% health almost the entire time. I was like, this is way too easy. Let me see what else this has to offer. So Brutal Doom has some new difficulty settings. It has.
Did you catch that really casual, like, brag right there, Patrick?
I played Doom way too much. No, this is not a casual brag. This is actually an admission of I have a problem and have played Doom too many times. And way too much. They added a new low difficulty called Power Fantasy. And then they added four new higher level difficulties, I should say. One was I am super bad. The other one is 12 out of a 10-point scale of bad, and black metal. And then after black metal is realism. I did not go for realism, but I tried the 3 new modes, and black metal was the one I settled on, which is the almost highest one. Realism just seems ridiculous. And I don't... It seemed like Nightmare in the original, which was just like, this isn't actually fun. This is just the game going, haha, I can be harder than any human being could possibly imagine. But the one of the new modes adds the enemies do 50% more damage. The other one is they move 50% faster, which matters, let me tell you. And the second one is, the third one is both of those together. Let's have some fun. I played black metal, which is the both of those together one. So it's enemies do 50% more damage and they move faster. And wow, it changes the entire game, and I freaking love it. Because what it does is I have played Doom so much that I'm used to the pace that the enemies move at, right? I'm used to how long it takes an imp to throw a fireball. I am used to how the speed the fireball comes down the hallway towards my face so that I can dodge it and continue to shoot said imp. Now, that fireball is moving 50% faster. So is the imp throwing it. And oh, by the way, so are the zombies that hit you the minute they see you in the regular game, except now they do that even faster. And they move down a hallway faster, and they see you faster, and holy crap, it's nuts. Checking corners was never more important than it is now. Like, you need to slowly edge your way around that corner almost, and be like, okay, there's a dude. You know, you need to, like, lure and bait enemies. The game still works, but it works in a completely different way. These are the original levels, guys. These are the freaking things that these guys dreamed up for the original Doom, and somebody changed the mechanics of how they work, and they still work. I don't know how this happened. It's like black magic.
No, black metal.
Also black metal, yes. But it is stupid fun. Like, I've died a few times, which is great, because I don't think I'm having fun unless the game is offering me, like, if I don't die a few times, the game isn't, it's not fun to me. You know what I mean? Unless the game offers me a fail state that I can actually run into, there's nothing for me to overcome. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to brag. That's not a humble brag or whatever, but...
No, if anything, it says you can't play the game that well.
I'm playing it on the second hardest difficulty out of, like, 12 difficulties now.
Yeah, well, don't die. Don't die.
And I think that might be what survival is. It's like, oh, you took a bullet, you're dead instantly. And with hit scanning enemies, that's not an easy thing to do.
But by the time this is all said and done, you are going to have played Doom in every way possible, which makes me think, you've heard of Elf on a Shelf. Now get ready for Doom in a Room.
Oh crap. Dude,
that might be the worst joke that we've ever had on this podcast.
Haven't you seen those memes?
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're good.
No, they're so bad.
No, some of them are good.
Now they're like, now get ready for Mario on a Wario.
Okay, that's not good. I've seen some that were amazing.
Waluigi on a squeegee. They're so bad.
Patrick, you had one other thing before we head over to Chrono Crossing?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's actually a really big development in the video game world of mine that I forgot about at first, but I'm glad we got to come back because you've been here since the beginning of my Hearthstone journey.
No.
And this time there's real things that happen in the real world. I am now on the Chicago Hearthstone team.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
You doing like an esporty thing or what?
Yeah. I met first time we met in a pub, and every Tuesday there's a Chicago Hearthstone league that I'm going to be doing for the next 6 Tuesdays with 2 other partners in a 3-person league. I'm not sure who they are, but one of the guys' name is Judas, so yeah.
Hey, don't trust him.
Yes.
I'm not going to let him kiss me.
He might betray you.
Really good looking. But, yeah, we got to make custom decks and play against another team of 3 in a variety of rules that are kind of like brawls. But at the end, there's official Blizzard prizes. Like the first one I went to was a tavern brawl that Blizzard set up across the country or world or whatever. And the people who got the farthest got better prizes. Now everybody got something. And I actually got something that I wanted more than the bigger Funko Pop prizes because they were just common Funkos. But like the Murloc Funko, I brought it all in organically. I got this pin like that I haven't even opened yet.
Oh, it's like the card back.
Yeah, it's a card back of cupcakes. I'm pretty sure
too. It's like layered. It's
sweet. It's amazing, and it's thick and it's heavy. And this was
that's what she said.
You got either this or you could pick like a little bag, and I didn't know what to put in the bag besides the weed, so I was like, it's probably for the best that I picked the collectible pin, because I think after Funkos, the next big craze is going to be limited edition enamel pins.
Oh, Disney's already got you beat on that. They've been doing that for years.
Yeah, but now like they're coming in like limited quantities to Comic-Cons and stuff. Like New York Comic-Con's got a bunch of like, Angelo, you need to go to Zen Monkey Studios and get the limited edition Rick and Morty enamel pins, and then I'll pay them. I'll pay you for them. Also, all the limited Funko Pops are only going to be there. I will take any of them.
I heard, by the way, that they were moving the New York Comic-Con to Albany.
What?
And if that is the case, I might go.
Oh my god!
Close
yeah,
to
you
me,
gotta
actually.
take the kids.
It's pretty sweet.
It's.
You've never been to a con,
I
right?
have not. Never been to a con. I almost went. I almost went to that one that was on a cruise ship, but that ended up falling apart. So,
because too much drinking.
No, because not enough money.
Yeah, that sounded pretty expensive. Like a regular con is going to be way cheaper than something like that.
We had booked it, and then we were just like at the last minute, like, oh wow, we really need this money to, I don't know, replace the car that somebody just hit. That was great. So yeah,
in a good con, you actually find deals that balance out the cost of the ticket most of the time. And
the tickets usually aren't like stupid expensive.
No, they're like $40 or something at the most.
It depends. They range anywhere from like 40 to about 100, depending on the con.
Oh yeah, and also sometimes you got to pay more to see like special hosts and stuff. Like I couldn't get in to see Stan Lee or something unless I paid. I mean, and also for autographs you pay too much. But sometimes you get Felicia Day to plug the cast.
I got to put that at the beginning of this episode now.
Hey, we got to use it more than once. Thank God.
Oh, we've used it many times. Yeah. I try to pepper those in when I can.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Like the last episode, I reused the one from the voice of Mr. Satan from the American Dragon Ball Z.
Oh my god!
Because it was an anime episode. So
see, I didn't even get into how I have Crunchyroll now.
Oh, Crunchyroll's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we should really move on though.
Just to wrap up on that Hearthstone though. Next 6, it was so cool because I got to be in like this big group that was like nationally against a bunch of other cities. And I was only on the bench, but I got to like kind of help with like what they should play or stuff like that. And we eventually lost to one of the highest ranked players, or one of the most well-known Blizzard tags, and his name's Firebat. We also had a guy who was ranked number 5 in Legend, which means he was number 5 in North America last month.
Damn.
So I thought I was good. I was in the top 2%, but that's still like in the top million. It's not number 5. I saw number
right,
and now I'm friends with number 5 too, and he told me how he did it and stuff. Basically, fucking warrior decks. I rest my case.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was a ton of Consumption Junction. We might be coming at you with some more sooner than you think. But we should really move on to Chrono Crossing. So let's cue that music. And this episode, we are Chrono Crossing back to 1989. Again, things are getting a little tricky as far as releases and stuff like that go. I know I say that every time, but we're almost done, guys. We only have a few more years to go. Okay. I'm going to start with Angelo,
Really?
Because I feel that I thought this was going to be another trifecta, but I feel like you're going to screw it up again.
No.
So just go ahead and lay it on me.
I don't think I am. Why? What did you think I was going to pick? Let me hear what you thought I was going to pick.
No, I don't know. Because again, like the game selections are getting so wonky that I may have missed something. But when I looked at 89 and I did my research and everything and double checked, I was like, oh, it's definitely this. I don't have to search any further. But go ahead and lay it on me, Angelo, and let me see.
The only game I saw that interested me, and that might be because I might have missed a few because it's getting really hard to find stuff, was Megaman 2.
Ah, yes!
So I'm in the fold, is what you're telling me?
Unless Patrick, messed up, because I can't imagine Patrick not picking Mega Man 2, because he's told the Mega Man 2 story at least 35 times on the podcast.
Well, I mean, I messed up because the thing I looked at didn't have it on the top 10 list of games from that year. I didn't know that was this year.
See, and that's what I said last episode. You gotta, pay attention, because I've noticed that Wikipedia in particular has started, they've been doing the Japanese releases instead of American releases. If we're going with America, they're usually off by about a year.
Okay.
So it probably came out in 88 in Japan, but we got it in 89.
Okay.
So...
Yeah, well, it wasn't Wikipedia. It was somebody's personal list, and for some reason they had Tetris Game Boy #1, which doesn't even count.
That
does
counts.
it?
That was 89.
Well, but it's not the
89
original
was the release
version
of the Game Boy.
It's not the original version of Tetris, is it?
Isn't that the first version that we got here?
Yeah,
Didn't it come out later on the NES?
I don't know. I
feel like it came out in... I feel like it came out for Nintendo in 90.
Wait, wasn't there the Tengen
There was
version?
Tengen,
That came
but
out
I don't know
earlier,
when
didn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, I thought it was on some proprietary system first.
Tengen almost kind of disqualifies itself.
Okay.
But also it doesn't, because that was the one that had the crazy 2-player version that was really awesome.
Yeah, I like the NES version better.
Really?
I know I'm weird. Tengen Tetris came out in 88.
Well, yeah. So, but Angelo, you got to play that Puyo Puyo Tetris for Nintendo Switch.
I do. I've heard that's really good.
Yeah, if you like the 2-player version of it, especially, that's that mixed with was it Boston Move? But yeah, no, it's Puyo Puyo is its own game. But
yeah,
I was gonna go with Super Mario Land. I didn't know that. Well, that's just a personal memory for me. But now I have to go Mega Man 2.
Okay, so can we just all do a big Mega Man 2 love-in? We don't have to go, we just do this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I had considered Mario Land as well, because, man, do I have a lot of great... But it's Mega Man 2.
Right.
Okay, real quick, Mario Land is, really special.
Yes.
The shooter levels, the weirdness of it, the bouncy ball instead of the fireball.
The enemies that don't appear in any other game.
Yeah, the Chinese hopping vampires?
Yeah, it's a cool, weird little game, but it's one that even when it came out, I was kind of but this just looks like NES Mario, and we had already had Super Mario Brothers 2 by that point, so I was already, and again, I'm a graphic snob, so I'm going backwards, and then when Mario Land 2 came out, I was like, okay, yeah, this looks cool, right? Now, don't get me wrong, Mario Land 1 is a great game, but especially up against Mega Man 2.
I think I like Mario Land 1 better than 2, only because I think the levels are more interesting.
But then 6 golden coins, though.
That's what I'm talking about. I think it's better than 6 golden coins.
I don't know.
6. It had
Bunny Mario.
Do we want to do this? When we went into 6 golden coins, we went to traditional Mario, traditional Fireball, traditional, kind of... Mario Land had, him throwing a bouncy ball that could collect coins for him.
True.
And had, the shooter levels, like you mentioned. And all the stages were not previously seen Mario stages. They had the Goombas, and you could squish them, but if you jumped on a Koopa Troopa, the shell would explode and try to kill you. It was real weird. They were freaking, I don't know, what were they? Egyptian...
Oh, they were, Easter Island statues, weren't there?
Easter Island heads. There were the Egyptian lion statues that would breathe fire.
Yeah.
It was a crazy game.
Yeah.
Also, that was...
But Mega Man.
That was a, what's his name? We had just mentioned him a second ago. The guy who got a lot of credit for the virtual guy.
Oh, Yokoi. Yeah, that was the one that he directed.
That was his take on Mario.
I remember.
Yeah.
That was Yokoi. Yeah, so that's kind of cool.
I mean, I did play Mega Man 2 this year, so I think it's got to be.
Yeah, I did too. I literally played Mega Man 2 on my 3DS on the plane ride home. And it's funny because you're going to laugh at me, but to me, the hardest boss in Dr. Wily's castle on Mega Man 2 is the one where it's just the little sensors on the walls that shoot at you, and you have to use the crash weapons. You can only kill them with the crash bombs, and it's a very specific order in which you have to do it. Otherwise, you run out of energy, and then you're just screwed.
Yeah.
And I always do it wrong the first time.
Yep.
So that's the hardest boss in the game for me.
I was going to say, I think I die at least once on that boss every time, but then you die and you start again, but you don't have your energy.
Mm-hmm. So you gotta farm it. Yeah.
That's the worst.
And I died trying to farm the energy, so I was like, okay, this is not happening on a plane ride. Yeah,
and you have to actually be able to tank a few hits to get through that boss because the turrets are shooting at you.
Yep, and it's really hard to avoid them all.
Yep.
No, but I mean, I've said it before, and I know Angelo and I differ on this, but Mega Man 2 is my favorite Mega Man for so many reasons. Like, and I think one of the things I love so much about Mega Man 2 is the ballsiness of it.
Yeah.
Because Mega Man 1 was not a successful game. And Mega Man 2 was not an officially sanctioned game. They made it on their own. Like, they said they were making another game. Like, they told Capcom brass they were making something else. And then they made Mega Man 2. And it was like such a ballsy gamble. And they did it again with Street Fighter, because Street Fighter 1, didn't set the world on fire. Street Fighter 2 set the world on fire. Yep. So they had something going on at that company at that time. But just the idea of like, we're just gonna kind of do our own thing and not tell our bosses what we're actually doing is like so crazy to me.
Yep.
And it ended up being one of the best games that I've ever played.
And it has great moments. Like, don't get me wrong. I still remember the first time I got to that dragon boss.
Yeah.
And like your hair just stands up and you're like, holy crap, this thing is huge. What do I even... And it just annihilates you the first time you fight it. It's actually a really easy boss, which is kind of funny once you know what to do. But when you don't know what to do, and it... God, and then I found out how they did it from a technical standpoint, and it's like, it's a background sprite, but they did the whole animation where it drops in like Mega Man with the... It's so cool.
Yeah. So many little trickeries and stuff that kind of push the Nintendo. Well, and again, the Nintendo was still relatively new at this point, so it wasn't pushing it to its limits, but it was doing stuff that people didn't think they could do at that point.
It was pushing it forward for sure.
Yeah.
But it does show you by Julian's story that Capcom did have this history of putting games out at first that weren't quite fully featured, and they would add to them in the second version. Like,
right.
And was that a Street Fighter V reference?
And it was better themed. It was better themed. Like Metal Man has all these gears in the background, it has these presses, these conveyor belts. Like you feel like you're in some industrial machine.
It's so much more colorful than the first game. Like it just pops. And I mean, it's my favorite Capcom soundtrack. I mean, it just is. Oh, it's so good. I've used Mega Man music from Mega Man 2 in a lot of episodes, and I'm going to do it again tonight, but it's just iconic music. And I mean, Dr. Wily's stage music is like one of my all-time favorite riffs. Like, I can listen to that for days. I mean, I actually had intended to start this segment. I was going to wait until it got to me. I was just going to go, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and that was going to be my answer, because like that should say it, like, oh damn, what a great game.
I love Mega Man 3, but we wouldn't have Mega Man 3 without 2.
Yeah. It started a franchise even though it was a sequel.
Yeah, it really did. The difference between Mega Man 1 and Mega Man 2 is like a kid's sketchpad version versus a Disney animated film.
Yeah.
Like,
or to bring it into modern terms for people who may not have played the old Mega Man games, imagine Assassin's Creed 1 versus 2.
Yeah.
Right? Like Assassin's Creed 1 has all of the ideas in there, but it's not implemented well. Like, it's just kind of rote and boring. And then Assassin's Creed 2 builds on it in every possible way and makes it special. Yeah. Right?
I tell a lot of people, just go right to 2.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You should go back to 1 as a curiosity. And 1 is a good game. It is not a great game.
Yeah.
Right.
2 is a great game. 3 is great game.
You want to see a recap of the story, probably, because that's the best part about those games. But
that's modern, though. We're talking about the past.
Right.
Did anybody have any closing comments on Mega Man 2? Because I kind of feel like
Well, I don't know if I ever told you the story of...
Don't you dare.
Let me tell you about this ROM hack version of Mega Man 2. No.
It does look like it could be on a Super Nintendo almost. Like,
no. Let's not get crazy.
I mean, the colors are a lot more vibrant than a lot of the other.
Colors are gorgeous. Like they used a really good palette in that game.
I would have loved, by the way, to have seen them done like the Mario All-Stars treatment to the Mega Man games.
They did. They put them on. They did it on the Sega Genesis, though.
The Legacy Collection.
The Mario,
that's right.
Wily
no, yeah, it was the Genesis one, but that's like super rare.
Right. Well, no, it's super rare because in the United States it wasn't actually physically released. It was on the Sega channel. The European version is where they had a card. But that's where I found out what the stupid Fireman music ear noise garbage part was actually supposed to sound like, and that was kind of cool. Because it's supposed to be like a go-go bells. I don't know if you know what those are. It's hard to explain if you don't know, but they're like two little bells on two little sticks, and they use them in Latin music a lot. If you just listen to the two different versions and you'll hear what I'm talking about. But basically it's like, oh, that's what they were going for with the Fireman music. Boy, did that sound like garbage on the NES.
Did we want to say our order? We kind of did that on Twitter recently, so.
There's really only one order.
We did it on here.
Yeah.
When you were talking about playing it, we kind of talked about our order.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get through these ones at Pixelbit pretty quickly. Xrian says Tetris. He says, this game defined the Game Boy. Its gameplay was addicting and the music still plays visibly in my mind. This original version may still be the best version of the game, possibly only losing out to the Tetris DS game that's sprinkled Nintendo themes into it. Yeah, let's see. I like the original Tetris more, but a lot of people like Tetris DX for Game Boy Color more. But I prefer original Tetris.
I think that Tetris for the DS is cool with the party mode and 4 players and stuff. But
I mean, Tetris,
I didn't play that one.
Game Boy was the one I owned and played all the time. And my brother and I both had Game Boys, so link cable action happened.
Can you, I don't know, explain the pattern? Because I always screw up and I'm not sure what kind of pattern I'm supposed to be going for. Is there any way to go through that now?
What?
How
pattern?
I don't know, sort of ways that you should position all the different types of bricks.
Is this going back to you didn't know how to play Donkey Kong? Is that what we're doing right now?
No. I that was a lot worse. This, I can get through it for a while until it goes super fast. But I really just do it all improvising. And I'm pretty sure the people.
Congratulations, you're playing Tetris. I mean, that's what we do, man. We make it up as we go. The pieces come. We try to fit them into a wall so that they disappear.
See, I have no strategy though. I feel like people have a certain way that the blocks should go.
There's
when it's slow, I'll try to set up actual Tetrises as often as I can because you can do it then. But at some point, it's I'm just going on sheer reaction. I'm like, oh shit, I got to do this right here, right now, and I didn't spin it right, and now I'm screwed. That's Tetris.
Okay,
yep. You're doing it right.
I thought that was just me.
No, that's the game of Tetris. Tyrone Swift says, I'm going to pick my personal favorite beat 'em up of all time, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game. Yes.
Yep.
Oh. I liked me some Ninja Turtles in those days, so this filled my young heart with joy. I have many fond memories of getting to the 3rd level before dying. I wasn't very good at games then. Hey, it was a quarter muncher, man. Mm-hmm. That's what it was supposed to do.
Yep.
I loved that game, and also, my dad was super, anti-video games, and he always said that, until they looked like cartoons, he wouldn't care. And it was 2 games that I got him to care about. One was Dragon's Lair, because it was an actual cartoon. And the other was Ninja Turtles, the arcade game, because, he had seen me watch the cartoon. He's like, okay, that actually looks a lot like the cartoon. He still didn't give me a quarter to play it because he really hated video games. Halo Chief 90 says Mega Man 2. I missed out on choosing Mega Man 3 last podcast, so I'll choose Mega Man 2, which is almost as good as Mega Man 3. You're wrong.
He's right.
I should really go back and play Mega Man 3. I haven't played it in a long time.
It's real good.
Yeah.
I should look at it more objectively, but, 2 is in my heart. San Andreas has a lengthy one here. San Andreas says, although there were great games like TMNT, Dragon Warrior, and Faxanadu. Oh, Faxanadu. I'm going to go with Super Mario Land for the Game Boy. Sure, it was a half-size Mario with a lot of weird concepts that never made it into mainstream Mario canon. The reason why it sticks out to me is that in 1989, it was incredible for 11-year-old Andrew to be able to play a handheld Super Mario game. The Game Boy is one of my favorite Christmas presents of my entire life. I still have my old Game Boy that's now 30 years old, or nearly 30 years old. I guess the correct answer to this would be Tetris, which is more universally known and could be argued to have more universal appeal. But the novelty of Tetris has been long gone for me, while Mario is still as awesome as ever.
I will say this, and this was the case for probably you and me, Julian. Previous to that, our handheld games had been Tiger Electronics garbage. You know what I mean? So then all of a sudden we get this game where it's like, wow, this is actually scrolling. Wow, I'm actually jumping on stuff while I'm throwing fireballs. When my brother and I got our Game Boys, I got Mario Land and he got Solar Striker. I would argue he got screwed, but that was what he picked. And Solar Striker's not bad. It's really
no, it's not. But it's not Mario Land.
But it's not Mario Land. Solar Striker is a better shooter game than Mario is. Whatever. Mario has shooter parts. It was mind blowing. I can understand why somebody would pick it because just what that game was doing versus what stuff was doing that we had held in our hands on the past was totally different. So that's cool.
Yeah, I was thinking about the universal appeal of Tetris for a second and why I hate it so much. It's not anything to do with like the game itself. Like I said, I enjoy like playing it competitively against multiple people at a time, but I do think it is a great metaphor for life, and it kind of reminded me of how they talk about life versus death in like one of the recent episodes of Game of Thrones, where it's not a spoiler, but they just basically say everybody has to go up against it and everybody loses in the end. And that's kind of what it's like to go up against death playing Tetris, because you'll never win.
The funny thing is, there's a quote about Teddy Roosevelt, speaking of Mount Rushmore again, where he died in his sleep, and somebody said, yeah, death had to come from when it was sleeping, because he would have put up a fight if he was still awake.
Casey says, my 1989 Chrono Crossing pick is Tecmo Bowl. Nearly 30 years later, and I still have more fun with this than Madden or 2K. The simplicity of it holds up so well, even though, like every other sports game at the time, the cheap computer ruins playing solo. I saw a great video recently of a dad and it was a dad and his kid playing Tecmo Bowl, and then it's a dad and his kid playing the new Madden, and like just the differences between it, where it's like the Tecmo Bowl, they pull it out of the box, they put it right into the NES, and they're playing and having a lot of fun. Madden, they take it out of the wrapper, they put it in the Xbox, it updates for like an hour, then they're going through all the menus, they never actually play the game. And then it turns out that like the dad playing Madden is the kid who is playing Tecmo Bowl. So then his dad comes in at the end and has the NES and they play Tecmo Bowl, as much older people. It's a really neat video.
Huh.
Tecmo Bowl is one of the few sports games that I actually like. Like
me too.
There's very few that I do. Tecmo Bowl has a great rhythm to it. Feels good. Like no other. NBA Jam might be the only other. Maybe the bigs, but like on the scale, it goes like NBA Jam, Tecmo Bowl, then the bigs, right? Like just as far as like these crazy, ridiculous games, but they feel right when you play them.
Mm-hmm.
Even like I remember throwing a pass, and the first time seeing the target off to the side, and my character, like you had to maneuver the one guy to catch the ball, and you saw where the ball was going, and you had to put him under where it was going to be, and I was like, that is so good. Like it's such a smart thing to do. You're always doing something. I don't remember any other game doing that. Yeah, that's a good sports ball game.
Yeah, that was one of the ones that started it all for a lot of sports players. Is that the one where Bo Jackson's the best? Or is that the second one? Because in one of them, you can just outrun everybody.
I think it's that one.
Yeah, it's just so funny. I see videos every once in a while on Instagram, just someone hiking the ball and running right back to the end zone and then getting the entire team to come and follow him and just going down to the bottom and coming back around, going to the 1 yard line, then going up instead of going in the end zone all the way back and around again.
Also, Ken Griffey's Major League Baseball in the SNES felt real good too.
Michael117 brings up a good point. He says, we're getting back to to when I was a baby in the early 90s and my parents bought us an NES and I came home from school to play crappy games all day without knowing better. The games from 1989 that I played the most were Draken and Astyanax on NES. So that shows you what kind of shit show we're talking about. Astyanax is really bad, guys. Really bad. SimCity also came out. I remember in elementary school, our teacher in computer class let us play SimCity one day and it was fun. So I'll pick SimCity because it's either that or Astyanax.
Damn.
You chose correctly, sir. Yep. Oh, I rented Astyanax and I got a cheat code just because I wanted to see the ending because I hated it so much.
The original SimCity wasn't bad. I remember playing that on SNES. The one we had for computer was SimCity 2000.
2000 was the great one.
But yeah, that was the great one. SimCity was like you just had these giant blocks that you put down for like this is an industrial district, and then you drew roads around it. It was still good, but it was like the beginning of we're on. It was the same thing. SimCity 2000 was the Mega Man 2 of we're gonna do that now. This is the Mega Man 2 of whatever instead of the Dark Souls of whatever. Like SimCity 2000 was the Mega Man 2 of the SimCity franchise.
Yeah.
So. That spawned so many side games that were
my gosh,
so crazy. Sim Farm, Sim Ant.
Yep.
Night Driver says, my 1989 pick would be Golden Axe. Yes.
Good one.
He said, I didn't play it in 89, but probably in the 90s on Genesis. My favorite thing about it is riding a creature and slapping those fools with my tail. My favorite thing about that game is Gilius Thunderhead. I always pick the dwarf.
Pick the dwarf. If you're not picking the dwarf, you're doing it wrong. Seriously, it's the best character in that game.
Right, now that the peasantry have gone, the best thing about Hero Quest is the dwarf. Ah, yes, the barbarian, strictly for beginners. He is, in fact, easy mode. True aficionados of Hero Quest and masters of the game choose the dwarf.
I was doing it wrong.
I've probably said it on the show before, but I got to the point where I could beat that game in a quarter at the arcade. That's how much I played that in the arcade.
Wow.
It was crazy. The Pizza Hut down the street from my house that I've talked about before. I was there a lot in middle school. A lot. All right, we've got a couple here from Twitter, at NWPcast. First one comes in from friend of the show, John Golston, at Golston. He says, Tetris for Game Boy. It's untouchable. Changed lives and rewired humans' brains. Accurate.
He's not wrong.
Nope.
It's pretty correct.
Yes. Now we have a new entry from a man named Mike Glennon, at Mr. Mike Glennon. Again, if you're actually listening to the show, welcome aboard. If you just hit us up on Twitter, I guess I'll try to tweet at you. I'll try to. He says Mega Man 2 if you go by US release. He would say Castlevania 3 if you're going by initial release regardless of region, but we are going by US. John Brandon from the Square Roots podcast, at Johnny Barnstorm on Twitter, has done a Nerds Without Pants first, y'all. He has named a game that I have never heard of for Chrono Crossing. This has never happened. He says The Colonel's Bequest. I love that game.
What was it?
The Colonel's Bequest. So, congratulations, John Brandon. You win Chrono Crossing.
Yeah. The Colonel's request.
And
you done
why?
stumped the host.
Does he say why or what it is?
I had replied to him and he told me, but that was a long time ago. So look up the Colonel's Bequest. I don't remember what type of game it was.
Request or Bequest?
Bequest. Okay. Bequest.
Does this have anything to do with Custer's Revenge?
No.
Holy crap.
I will disqualify anybody that picks Custer's Revenge. Or was it Last Stand?
Or
no, Revenge. It was Revenge.
Because he lost.
Our good friend, Philip Becker actually DM'd us on Twitter. He's at PK Becker. He says, I'm going to trust IGN's top 100 NES games for dates at the moment and say that Faxanadu will be my pick for 1989. I don't really have anything to say about it except that I did not play until a couple years back. Faxanadu, or as Jeremy Parrish made me realize, it's actually Fa-Xanadu, if you're pronouncing it in the Japanese version. That is one of my favorite NES games. It's a side-scrolling, like, action RPG, and all of your gear and weapons actually change the appearance of your character, which was so mind-blowing back then. Like, I still can't believe they did that.
And very significant.
Because they don't do that now.
Yeah, and they make very significant changes when you get new gear, too. Like, it's not subtle crap.
All right, guys, that's it for Chrono Crossing 1989. That's also going to wrap up this episode of Nerds Without Pants. Again, apologies for being out for so long, but I think we made it up for you in this episode. Apologies also if I annoyed anybody with my anti-piracy rant, and Patrick knows that I love him. So we're all good here. But we're going to go ahead and shuffle off. Again, Angela, what are we doing for stage select?
I want to know what you feel are the 3 most overrated video games.
Yeah, it's going to cut deep.
Mm-hmm.
And we also want to know your favorite game of 1988. As always, you can go to pixelbit.com and comment in the show thread for episode 120, or you can hit us up on Twitter at NWPcast, and we're going to want those entries by 8:30 Central Time on October the 5th. That's when we need those. But you can also find us individually on the Twitter. Patrick.
At some boss.
Angelo.
At a roguish ham.
And you can find me at Julian_Titus. And I don't really feel like debating with you about the efficacy of piracy. I don't want to do it. I think I made my stance pretty clear, so we don't need to get into it online. That's gonna do it for this episode. For myself, Patrick, and Angelo, thanks for listening, and keep it pantsless, Internet. Goodbye.
Wow.
Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.